Meyer backpedaling, running out of time, spinning away, and nobody open. Now he flips it up into traffic and makes a mistake. Trying to force the play, and it's intercepted. B.J. Mays rumbling down inside the 10.
This is 365 Sports.
Bowling Green with no timeouts. And Nick Singleton. Touchdown, Penn State.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Klubnik, undaunted, unafraid, complete, Turner, touchdown!
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Why not?
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Jennings on the play fake, slides it upfield. Matthew Hickner off to the races. Hickner at the 30, full speed, and the big tight end goes 75. It's a Pony Express.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
All right, here we go on this Friday afternoon, 365 Sports with Craig Smoak, Paul Catalina. I'm David Smoak. We're in studio, also full throttle with Garrett Ross running the mothership. Emery Winter, who is always working on many things, not just the show, but other stuff, including the show tonight at 10:30, the CW, and Andrew Valade, King Jiu-Jitsu, on pushing out so much content and the polls he'll put up. In fact, he's already got one up. Do you agree with the Big 12 putting the pause on the private equity? That's something we'll get to today on the show. Hello.
I don't understand the King Jiu-Jitsu nickname at all.
He's a jiu-jitsu master.
Okay, that makes more. I thought he was a hockey player, so damn, Andrew's like, I mean, I got to be careful walking around you, I guess.
He should have gone, and he could win the decathlon.
Well, look, I'll just tell you. I mean, he may be small in stature, but if he puts you into the boards, you didn't want to mess with him.
No, I'm not going to mess with him. I mean, he's over there. He's quiet, too, like me, so I know how we're perceived by people, but he's actually got, like, the hockey and jiu-jitsu background. So I was just wondering, this is a random nickname that I thought he was throwing out there. So I'm glad to have clarity, and I'm glad that it makes sense, actually. So, respect.
Sometimes there are many things out of this mouth I think don't make sense.
There was a bit of relief in your voice when you said that it makes sense.
Yeah.
Like Craig, where you're we're just like a little bit worried. Like, I'm really glad, like, of all of it, like that you understand it was sub to secondary.
Yeah.
Totally secondary to the fact that your father isn't just losing it.
Yeah.
All right. There are many things that are going on, including the opening day of the college baseball regional round, and we'll check in on a lot of those scores. And then some teams in the Big 12 playing tonight, too. And there were a couple of games early. One of them is kind of an eye-opener. We'll get to that. Also, we're going to hear from Brett Yormark, Big 12 commissioner, who spoke today in Orlando as they wrapped up the spring meetings. Dr. Linda Livingstone was a part of that, too. There's a lot to get to, including some finger-pointing again. Even now, the Big 10 with a couple of nuggets at the SEC. And it's just funny to watch the turf war. It's not just the two as they look down at everybody else. And we'll have that, too. That's another story. We will have Ari Temkin, Big 12 Radio Network, otherwise known as John Lennon. He'll join us today at 3:30. Dave Rumsey sat down with Brett Yormark yesterday in Orlando. He'll join us today at 4:40. Mickey Spagnola, Bruce Feldman on a great article on the best play calls in the careers of many of the known best play callers in college football. So all of that, plus the top five, and then also Andrew and the poll results. So here we go. So earlier today in Orlando, Brett Yormark on the college football playoff. What does he want? What does the conference want? We've heard some of this, but this is from him on the 5 automatic qualifiers and the 11 at large.
Well, we're pushing 5 and 11. We have all week. I was also glad to hear that the SEC coaches supported, that format, which is critically important. We've had great collaboration with our colleagues. As all of you know, we I'm on the management committee for the CFP. The four Power Four commissioners have been meeting separately, vetting out different models and opportunities. When we were recently in Charlotte, we formally presented the Big Ten and the SEC with options that one, we had a preference for, but also if we did end up going with an AQ model, which is not our preference, how we felt about that. We will look forward to continue dialogue with them. I'm sure we'll connect next week, and then we'll be together in person in a couple of weeks. But I think there's real momentum for 511. Certainly the public is voting yes for it, which I think is critically important, and it's a very good sign. And yes, the Big Ten and the SEC are leading the discussions, but with leading those discussions, they have a great responsibility that goes with it to do what's right for college football and not to do anything that just benefits two conferences. And I have a lot of faith in the process, and I think we'll land in the right place.
He's said that a few times, and we've heard him say it the last couple of days, guys, as far as, yes, the Big Ten and SEC is both the ACC and Big 12 handed off what they get to, lead the way with whatever's next with the college football playoff. But he has made that clear. And I wonder if he has to say that and if that is really well known, because sometimes you wonder when you hear, especially from Greg Sankey, what is best for college football, even though he thinks he's doing that. Is that also a legal maneuver that they could go to court if they didn't like the way this thing's set up down the road with the 16-team playoff?
I think right now it's just public relations, and it's trying to say what they believe the right thing is. And the right thing is 5 plus 11. And it takes away the automatic qualifiers, and it doesn't make it an invitational. All these things we've been over and over and over again. And I think that's just the tack they need to say is like, look, to make this work going forward, they haven't all gotten the message. Look, you've been losing in court. That means that you're going to have to, before you lose or get in fights, make some compromise before, like, go in willing to compromise. Now, I know that Greg Sankey feels that the SEC has compromised enough, but none of these things are going to happen are going to make it so impossible for the SEC to achieve their dreams. As a matter of fact, the fact that they could get 6 teams in this easily almost every single year, and maybe 7 at some point, they could easily do that. Why? Like, I don't know why you'd be fighting it at all, other than just trying to get the best actual dollar figure.
It is
which is the only thing that makes sense to me.
It's interesting to see how this has changed from what would have been more automatic qualifiers. Craig, you brought that up in the beginning. Isn't that a pretty good thing with 2? And now the Big 12 is on board with what the SEC coaches want, which is the 5 and 11. And so some of that has kind of softened up a little bit, or at least moving in that direction.
Is that what the SEC coaches want? I don't know. I think
the coaches all said they wanted 5 plus 11.
Okay.
Now the talk in Destin was they asked Greg Sankey, okay, the coaches all seem to want 5 plus 11 because the coaches are like, well, that's better. Now I don't have to worry about, and again, because they do think that every other conference is beneath them, they don't have to worry about a bid stealer getting a second bid that they wouldn't deem worthy. They think this is better because it gives them more of a shot to make it, which is true.
I think every coach except maybe one said that they wanted the 5 plus the 11 at large.
That was, but the disconnect came when they asked Greg Sankey, well, how do the athletic directors and the presidents feel about that? And he's like, well, they don't all share the same view as the coaches. And you're like, oh, so the people who know less up the line are the ones making the decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm clarifying on who wanted that. And so, yeah, it was the athletic directors. And I think when you start pointing the finger at who the people are that really do not care about college football as a whole, it's not Greg Sankey and it's not the coaches. It's the SEC athletic directors. Mm-hmm. I think those are the main culprits, and perhaps the Big Ten athletic directors would fall in line with that as well. But those are the main culprits that have absolutely no care in the world for the greater health of college football. And you could say, just like you said with Greg Sankey, well, it's not their responsibility. They only got to worry about Ole Miss, and they only got to worry about their conference. And that's true too, to what extent you want to, give them that defense. But I think Brett Yormark really making it a point to kind of put the onus on the Big Ten and the SEC ultimately being the decision makers, to the point of there's an ESPN article just based off of his talking about the Big Ten and the SEC and talking about exactly what had Greg Sankey flipping his lid the other day of doing what's best for college football. So I do think there's a PR element to keep putting that out there, and I think he needs to keep putting that out there. I think Jim Phillips needs to put that out there. I think anybody who's got an ear of anybody who's going to put out a headline needs to put that out there, just to keep them accountable, I think is what you can do more than anything else. And then if they go the different direction and they throw middle fingers at you and they decide to do what they want to do anyways, you say like, well, they clearly don't care about what's best for college football, and let them own that. But I don't think Sankey just got a little out of sorts. It's not like he like flipped his lid and threw it. It wasn't anything crazy, but it clearly like that was a barb that he did not like, because it's exactly where he went when he got the microphone. Was I don't need to hear about the benefit of the best of college football. So I think that's an alley that you keep going down if you're Yormark and everybody else, about just keep hammering that they need to do what's best for college football. And what's best for college football is what's best for the fans. So ultimately, that's what they should be doing. It should be about what's best for the overall game. So yeah, keep driving that point home, and then ultimately they're going to do what they do, but at least you've got it out there. And like I said, it's a little bit of accountability. So
what the coaches want could be the right thing, but what the ADs and presidents want could be two different things too. And they're the ones that, of course, are the ones that end up being the voters. The presidents vote for all of this, and some presidents look at it all differently than others. Now, one note, Craig, you mentioned about Sankey, of course, earlier this week. You could tell he was a little disturbed by a few things that had been said. He thought last week towards the SEC, or even towards the Big Ten combined. But Brett Yormark, and good that someone asked him this, about what did you think about what Greg Cranky, that's his new name. What did you think about what Sankey said earlier this week, when it looked like he was pointing at the Big 12 and the ACC?
I agreed with Greg's follow-up statement that I'd be entertained by it, and I was. And we all have thick skin here. The neat thing about our relationship amongst the commissioners is we're going to battle. That's part of life. We're going to agree to disagree. We're kind of in that mode right now. But I have a lot of respect for my peers, and I know they have a lot of respect for me and Jim, and we'll end up in the right place.
All right, so that's Yormark saying that he agreed with the fact that what Sankey followed up with a little of that sense of humor. I'm sure they got a kick out of it in a certain way. So there's Yormark responding to that. Meanwhile, there's the private equity story. Remember when the Big 12 initially, that report that they could look at private equity, and then it was like a lot of people went to this, or maybe even have a sponsor attached to your conference name, and there were some that were like, ew. And then everybody has looked at the options of private equity, and now the Big 12 seems to be on pause with that, no matter what some of the reports have said this week about ADs and others being interested in some sort of a takeover. Here's Yormark on what's happened with the Big 12 and private equity.
We certainly went through the exercise, as we should, doing our due diligence, and it was very appropriate. At this point in time, we're putting it on pause. We understand what's out there at the capital markets. We know it very well. Our model was, though, very different. It was more of a bespoke model, custom tailored to the potential needs of the conference, getting some strategic expertise and areas to grow the conference, but at the same time, potentially having a capital resource. But at this point in time, we decided to press pause. There's a lot of things going on, as we all know, in the industry that we need to focus.
This was interesting to me in that after I read David Rumsey, who's coming up at 4:40 today, after I read his column, I saw another column about year one of private equity in the NFL, and most of the money from the private equity hasn't been so much from private equity firms as motivated individuals who want to be part of the NFL. So while the 49ers just sold, some stake in their franchise, like 8% or something like that last week for just a ton of money. But again, it wasn't to like a private equity group. It was to a guy with private equity, but it wasn't to a firm, that is out there. So I think that college football was a little bit, especially the Big 12, was a little bit wary of that, because if you at least have someone like Redbird Capital, they have all these different like sports interests all together, and you're part of their portfolio. But if you get just one really motivated billionaire in there, you kind of have to kowtow to just him. And I think that that's a little bit, concerning. And we'll see, in the NFL how it is. But college football, far less power that you have to do. So I think that was certainly part of it as well.
Yeah, and NFL actually has a structure, and NFL actually has a leader, and the NFL actually has board members that hold each other and their own interest all in the same pile, and they're not like the Eagles are trying to screw over and steal the Jaguars from the AFC South and then go to the TV market and negotiate for the NFC East to have the best TV deal, which is what happens in college football. They're all under the same TV deal. They're all getting the same money. It's black and white. It's not even comparable, the two leagues. And so I think, it works for the NFL because of the way they're structured. And perhaps it works for college sports to some extent, but it is not an apples to apples comparison in any way, shape, or form, really, because they're just totally organized and backed differently. So I think private equity is something that's going to hang around, and I won't pretend to be an expert on it. It's all very confusing to me, quite frankly. But pause is the key word. It's not something that they might not go back to. They're just not going to it right now. And it sounds like they've done their due diligence. And as he said there, he got in the remarks about how detailed their actual strategy was and how, custom tailored it was to the Big 12. So they've got that on hand if they need to go to it. And I do wonder if how much support or lack thereof was in that room, because Yormark's thrown a lot out there. And initially he got a lot. There's a lot of stuff going on and accomplished, it felt like. And then feels like there's been some things that they've presented that haven't, been authorized here lately. So I like that he's still putting stuff out there. You just wonder, what's the next thing going to be where they actually all get on board with it and they run with it. But it not being private equity is fine with me, because the story, when it boils down to it, whether you are somewhat confused by it like I am or wherever you are, now is not the time to be rolling around and throwing out private equity. And when you have absolutely no idea what the playoff looks like in 2 years, much less your conference makeup in 5 to 10 or whatever. So I do think there are more pressing matters at the moment. And once you can kind of accomplish those goals of getting some of these things checked off your to-do list, then go back to the drawing board when you have things a little bit more settled and say, all right, now it makes sense for us to do this. But I do think that right now, with so many unanswered questions, it's probably not the best time to go that route.
Dave Rumsey will join us, Craig, on that. In fact, here's one of the quotes that he got from Yormark when he asked him about the value available. There's different ways to look at it. We're exploring a potential partnership that brings strategic expertise to grow the business of the Big 12 while also having someone that could be a capital resource. So the model we're looking for and exploring was someone bespoke, custom tailored to the needs of the conference, and we're not ready to do that yet. That's just, I'm giving you the quote exactly the way he said it.
And I would also say that bespoke to the conference is not necessarily how most of the private equity firms would want to do it right now either.
All right,
so they want to do it bespoke to the private equity firm.
But isn't it interesting, when that first came out that they were discussing that everybody looked at it as if it was like mildewed, like sour milk. And then you see, like even the NFL, you see where, it was new. So it was like some people, depending on who wanted to do that, it's like, that's a great idea. Others, it was, oh man, I don't know. Is that what you want to do?
Yeah, well, I mean, that often comes from the same people who are like brand whores. I mean, that it's the Big 12 does it, or the ACC does it, or the Big 10 does it. Ooh, that's icky. Or the SEC does it. Ooh, that's icky. And the moment it looks like it could be something worthwhile, then they jump on board, as quickly as possible. So, yeah, we've seen the Big Tens looked at private equity, and everybody's looked at it to some extent. I tell you right now, the WWE thing, like yesterday we were talking, which is not even like a big deal. It's like they're going to go do shows in cities where there's games the next day. I think that's not really something that's too crazy. It's just like, okay, that makes sense to just kind of mesh it all together, and a good opportunity for fans in those cities on those weekends to maybe have another event to go to. And there is an element of people that just don't like wrestling or just think that's not something that should have a place in college football. And I can definitely understand that. But I'll tell you right now, those same people, if their conference announced the same thing tomorrow, be like, you know what? This is a cutting edge idea that I think is fantastic. Like, that's how people are. So yeah, it's when you do it, it's not cool. When we do it, though, it's cool. And everybody's eventually already has dabbled in at least discussions about private equity. So I wouldn't look my nose down on anybody looking at any options right now, because if it actually does have something to it, everybody's going to follow suit.
All right, Brett McMurphy, college industry source, after seeing the SEC promoting itself as the nation's best football conference. This is like the NFL saying they're the best football league, or the NBA saying it's the best basketball league. Why even do this? What's the purpose?
It's just more propaganda that they've been doing. I think there's another thing that they're trying to do is they're trying to get out ahead of when everybody realizes, and I realize that Brett Bielema was about to say this, that when you say like, hey, for the last 10 years, you're like, yeah, but 7 years ago, like if you take out, or 7 years, the first 7 years of that 10 years is a little bit different than the last 3 years, wasn't it? Because the conferences were vastly different because of you. The rules were vastly different because of the courts, and the playoff was vastly different because of all this stuff. So grading on something that happened just in 2015 and how great a team or the league might have been doesn't make much sense now, given the metrics that are around there now and how roster management has, had a bomb dropped on it.
No, in fact, you mentioned Brett Bielema. So let's go to that one, Garrett, with Brett Bielema, Illinois head football coach. And there was some response to this. This was in response to a note with all of the data, metrics, the top 50, whatever that came out yesterday. Brett Bielema at Illinois, great work headed into the weekend. Maybe have this extremely talented working group look at running the numbers on the last 2 years where legal NIL and portal transfer rules have balanced rosters like never before. Look at head-to-head, same time frame. Head-to-head with Power 4, especially with a possible Big Ten versus SEC challenge. And there's no better reality than recent history for reality, maybe 25 season playoffs and bowl matchups head-to-head. Can't wait for that press release. Now, he said that, and the very first response was, well, some said, hey, good for you. And some was, you were 11-29 at Arkansas when you were the coach in the SEC. And then, of course, he even responded to that. But there's Brett Bielema, the Illinois coach, saying, okay, all this looks great, but let's look deeper into the numbers.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate him going online and giving his 2 cents and at least stirring the pot a little bit more. And, yeah, he didn't have a lot of success at Arkansas, but he's had a lot of time in the game, and now he's been in both conferences, and he's got a first-row view of the game and kind of how it operates now. And I think, he's doing what he would do or what you would do and expect him to do as a coach in the Big Ten. He's defending the Big Ten and defending other non-SEC leagues. And so I think there's a lot of people that probably appreciate that it's not just a line of propaganda that we've kind of been fed all week long coming out of those meetings. Where were those meetings? Destin, right?
Destin,
I think out of Destin. So, I mean, you can definitely pick this apart. You can point out his record at Arkansas, but it doesn't change anything that he said here because number one is correct. Number two, I mean, I don't know the numbers off top, but obviously he mentioned that for a reason. And then number three, the Big Ten's won the last 2 national championships. For all the talking and squawking going on, they have done that. He's doing nothing any different than Lane Kiffin does at times or, numerous other coaches. So he's just doing the Big Ten version of that. So I see nothing wrong with it. If you like it when Lane Kiffin trolls people, then Brett Bielema, you should be fine with that as well. And if you're not, then you're just showing your actual colors. But the printouts that the SEC did give out at meetings, I understand why they did that, but it was straight propaganda. That was like the definition of propaganda. So they felt the need to do that for whatever reason. I'm not going to look too deep into it, but that was absolutely propaganda. And I like that this week, like I said before, I'm not anti-SEC, but I do like that since they've had the microphone, that everybody's not just sitting back and just giving them the floor and just taking it, basically. I like that people are pushing back on it. You could tell it makes them a little bit uneasy, but they're going to fight back too. And look, man, everything right now is stressful for everybody, including them. Including the halves in general, including the Big Ten. Everybody's just trying to wrap their arms around what's going on right now. So it's just it's an interesting time. Everybody's a little sensitive. Everybody's very defensive. And just hope on the other side of all this that we get some laughs out of it. But ultimately, the best is done for the game of college football. And that's all I think anybody's really trying to ensure, except for maybe the SEC presidents that want to just, take every spot and not worry about everybody else.
Here's from Brent Blum. And again, we have Ari in just a second from the Big 12 Radio Network, Sirius and XM. Some SEC administrators have wondered aloud this week if an SEC Big Ten only playoff is the right path. There would be no argument that the winner is the national champion, right? Asked one high-level SEC school official.
There'd be an argument.
There'd be absolutely the argument, buddy. I don't know what you're talking about.
Some would be entertained by it, but I think that then you would really even hear more of a landslide of negativity. What a gross concept to even suggest by an SEC official. Let's hope the public continues pushing against this.
Yeah, no, there would definitely be pushback on it. It might not alter this particular person's world, but man, you can just tell this person loves the smell of their own farts, can't you?
Yeah.
I mean, they just absolutely think it's the best thing out there. But I'm not surprised by that level of arrogance. I mean, this whole concept has been swirling for 2 years now, if not longer than that. So, there's people that actually think this is the path forward and this is the ultimate destination. And I think you have to at least be mindful that, this is a possibility at some point down the line, especially with the craziness of everything that's going on. But the time is not right now. And, it would absolutely get a whole lot of pushback. And this is the kind of thing where you do suddenly get the politicians involved. And that's where
there's even been some that have said, go ahead and do this.
Go ahead and try that and see what happens. And, we'll see where that all ends up in the long run. But I'm not surprised at all that there's people that think this, because I've seen it online for 2-3 years now that this is what some people want. And so there will be those that push for it, but I think the pushback right now would be greater than the push forward.
When we come back, Ari Temkin, hope you look forward to our segment coming up with Dave Rumsey from Front Office Sports and his discussion with Brett Yormark and more. Bruce Feldman, Mickey Spagnola. We've got loaded up today. The polls are up, and Andrew's already put one of them up, Paul's top 5. We appreciate your time. This is 365 Sports. PettyClinicalOT.com. Dr. Kent Petty can help you become the high-performance man that you want to be, need to be, and used to be as you get older. 1 out of every 3 to 4 men have symptomatic issues of low testosterone, from ED, lack of sex drive, energy, sleep habits, and something just doesn't feel right. And you've taken vitamins or extra vitamins or whatever else it might be. Something's not working. And so Dr. Kent Petty can help you out. Contact them, PettyClinicalOT.com. They will set you up to get your blood work. Take care of that appointment for you. Get the results, get back in touch with you. And if you're a part of that 1 out of every 3 or 4 men with symptomatic issues of low testosterone, give you an option to get that level back up where it needs to be at PettyClinicalOT.com.
Big with Employee Pricing Plus at Allen Samuels in Waco. Drive home a new Chrysler Dodge Jeep or Ram with smoking hot deals that slay the competition. Only at Allen Samuels. You're gonna love it here.
Come by. Let's be friends.
I'll never get used to this.
Whatever it is you wrangle, whatever seeds you sow, no matter what you nurture or what you choose to grow, at Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, we're proud to protect all Texans.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow at GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
The Jeep Celebration event is on at Allen Samuels. Get the luxurious 2024 Jeep Grand Wagoneer with a huge $13,000 dealer discount plus 0% financing. Big savings, legendary Jeeps at Allen Samuels in Waco.
Come by. Let's be friends.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Ari Temkin was in Orlando for the Big 12 spring meetings. We've heard from Brett Yormark from earlier today. He was there with Brett Yormark and everyone else and joins us on 365 Sports. It's been an interesting week, sir, with a little turf war, a little pushback, a little oversensitivity, and maybe some saying enough is enough. What's been your take throughout this week, Ari?
Yeah, I mean, these used to be pretty basic and non-drama filled meetings that they had every year to discuss, whatever perceived issues. And now these spring meetings are pretty substantial and, maybe none more so than this year's spring meetings. But there was obviously a lot of back and forth. I think the Big 12 was pretty steadfast in trying to, figure out its own path. But it's hard to sort of completely ignore the noise you're hearing from Destin and what the SEC was doing. And, look, I hear what the Big 12 is saying about the 5+11 model. We spent a lot of time on our show this week talking about the 4-4-2-2-1 or the 5+11, which all sound ridiculous. And I'd like to believe that the 5+11 would benefit the Big 12 more so than the 2 automatic bids. But I mean, Smoak, you and I have been around long enough to see Oklahoma State get snubbed, to see Baylor get snubbed by a committee. So, I look at it and say, in theory, the 5+11 works better for the playoff, for the future of the playoff for the Big 12. I'm just not sure in practice it's going to work out.
Ari, I think it's the only way the Big 12 and ACC can stop the train of the AQs. They're going to have to show that we're going to give up something here, which is 2 automatic spots. I think it's the only way you can kind of stop the train, because that AQ thing could get really ridiculous and be really bad overall. If you want the 16 best teams, I think you got to bet on yourself a little bit if you're these other conferences.
And I don't disagree with that. In fact, Paul, I agree with you. But we've seen the committee, guys.
Yeah.
We've seen that. This is nothing new for the Big 12. Here's my question to you, both of you. In the next 10 years, in the 5+11, do you think the Big 12 would average more than 2 teams over the next 10 years?
Average? No.
No, Craig just said no, not the average. No.
Right. No. So that's kind of where, having 2 automatic qualifiers out of the Big 12 seems insignificant. Seems like it's not seems like it doesn't matter. And the 5+11 sounds better. But I think, again, if we look at the next decade and we're to guess, my guess is the same. We'd probably average less than 2 teams per season over the next 10 years. So the 4-4-2-2-1 seems like the better model. And at this point now, the SEC seems to be trying to push that direction anyway, so that they feel like they can get 5 bids when push comes to shove.
Yeah, I feel like they're playing chess. Everybody else is playing checkers. I feel like whatever Sankey's saying, do the opposite almost, because he's hoping that you do that. You know what I mean? He's like Mr. Art of War, and he's got this all laid out. And look at the last 2 or 3 years and tell me they don't have some articulate master plan that they've been executing this entire time, where everything eventually does fall their way. I'm with you. I wonder if that's not the Big 12's compromise, though, is we're going to earn it on the field, and we're going to do not what's best for us. we're going to do what's best for college football. And I wonder if that's the message maybe from Yormark is, we're not going to be selfish and fight this. We're just going to do what's greater for the game because, man, Ari, it does feel like there's the headline today, Big 12 chief, Big 10 SEC must serve all football. We saw Sankey get a little bit in his, I guess, feelings when the good of college football was brought up earlier this week. He's like, that's not my job, but I almost feel like it's Brett Yormark intentionally putting out the good of college football, like to keep the onus on the Big 10 and the SEC to ultimately do what's right for the game. What do you think? Yeah, there's no question that that's why Yormark made those comments. And it certainly wasn't in lockstep with the ACC. But, I mean, the Big 12 doesn't really have a leg to stand on when it comes to leverage here. The SEC is driving the bus. And it appears that Sankey is the mouthpiece for both the SEC and the Big 10 because we haven't really heard anything from Tony Petitti of substance whatsoever. He's just a lapdog, it appears. And so, yeah, I mean, Yormark has to make his intentions known. And I think in doing so, he garners some sympathy. And I mean, look, I think there is a point at which the SEC can, go too far. There is a tipping point here. I mean, the ultimate point is like the SEC we're in the Big Ten. We're talking about like 5 teams here in terms of like the power of those conferences. 6 total teams have won the college football playoff over the last 11 years since it was first implemented. 6. And of those 6, 1 is an ACC team. And would you bet on Clemson winning a title in the next 11 years? I certainly wouldn't. Alabama's won a handful of those. Would you bet on Alabama winning a title in the next 10 years? I think maybe more so than Clemson, but I'm not sure about it. Georgia, LSU, Michigan, and Ohio State are the others. So, like, it's kind of amazing how the rest of these schools have lumped themselves in like there's some sort of big bad powerhouse when, like, the difference between any school in the Big 12 and any school in the ACC and any other school that's not LSU, Georgia, Bama, Michigan, or Ohio State is pretty much in the same exact boat. The only difference being the money difference that those schools then garner now because they're in the SEC and the Big 10. But no, I mean, I think you're 100% right. And again, in principle, like, yeah, win your way in. But again, I push back on that because we've seen the committee even last year with BYU not even being part of the conversation. Forget about whether or not BYU should have been in. They weren't even part of the conversation. That's the perception game that's being played right now across the media. And the Big 12 has lost seemingly every time that we've seen it. We saw Baylor get snubbed. We saw Oklahoma State get snubbed. To think that won't happen in the future with 11 at-large bids is foolish.
Ari, you're right. I think though that like you can't capitulate to the narrative, right? Because if you do, then you're just going to guarantee yourself that you never will. So this is a much bigger risk, obviously, but the reward is far greater on the other side. Which again, this could change in 5 years when the TV deals are up. So this isn't like if this is a 30-year contract, it'd be like, maybe take your 2 automatic bids or whatever, but it's not. So what I think that the pushback has to be, and I know that I've seen you and heard you comment on this, is that the SEC is a propaganda machine. They put out propaganda this week about, the S&P of the whole conference for the last decade. Well, Ari, what does the first 7 years of that decade matter in regard to the last 3 years where the friggin' rules are different?
Yeah, no, you're totally right. I mean, and how funny is that to be arguing about, winning it on the field and then producing some sort of a document that basically goes through the mathematics of why you're so much better than everybody else. Literally the exact opposite of handling it on the field. And it does feel like the SEC is on the defensive a little bit here. And
no doubt about it. And they're frustrated. Yeah.
Yeah. And they need, again, like they're certainly in position of power. And Greg Sankey is absolutely trying to secure his own conference's future. But like, you cannot alienate such a large majority of the country. And that's where like everybody's saying, oh, it's going to this massive, conference. And that's what's going to be the super conference. And I don't know. It almost seems like where we are now in terms of public perception and everything, that there's like pushback on that and realizing just how bad that would be overall, because, the Lakers need the Utah Jazz. They need the San Antonio Spurs. You need the Oklahoma City Thunder, right? Like the NBA, Major League Baseball can't just have the Yankees play the Yankees every day. You can't just have the Yankees play the Dodgers every game. You can't just say, well, we're the bigger market, we're the bigger brand, we should get everything, and not realize that like maybe individually some schools don't quote unquote matter, but collectively in the aggregate, those schools absolutely matter because it's such a large percentage of the population that, forever have cared about your sport because of the notion that there is an end that they can have to winning a national championship, as far-fetched as that might actually be.
Yeah, it's not an exact comparison, but when they tried the whole European Super League, like a lot of people have drawn some parallels to that. Yeah. And I do think it was public outcry ultimately that crushed that. And I think that could be similar here of like the public's just got to be vocal, and also the politicians that could get involved. Those are like the two P's I feel like that are like the only barriers from this just going full steam ahead. But I guess we'll see how that plays out. What did you think of the pause on private equity? Did that have any particular meaning to you one way or the other?
Yeah, I mean, not really. Certainly you look at that as a potential exploratory area for the Big 12 because the Big 12 needs to figure out revenue streams, but more than that, revenue streams that the Big 12, the Big 10 of the SEC won't touch. And I think private equity is probably in that lane. In reading between the lines of what Dave Rumsey wrote about for Front Office Sports, it appears that the board is not ready to move forward on it, meaning I think Brett Yormark got pushback on it. And maybe it's not even Yormark's job to say that they should go in one direction or the other, but just to present the information. But, I can tell you that Yormark did visit with multiple private equity firms. They got a presentation, they shopped it around and probably worked out what would be the best deal for them. And at this point, it appears that the board has said no, that the athletic directors, the chancellors involved have said no. So stay tuned on that. I also wonder too, does the Big 12 look to do a private equity deal for the conference as opposed to maybe, helping one work through for the schools? Because I think there's two folds to that. There's the Big 12 making a bet and an investment, but then there's also the conferences or the schools themselves. My guess is the private equity money is mostly wanting the schools themselves because the Big 12 is disposable.
This private equity thing is going to be interesting to watch how it eventually seeps into what's going to be college athletics. We know that's going to happen. So let me ask you this. This might have been from my dad a long, long time ago, and I didn't always listen to him, that when somebody is speaking or coming at you that you don't think is at your level, just ignore them. It'll drive them crazy. They didn't do that this week, did they, with Sankey? He is bothered by what was said or released last week. And it is kind of funny. There's still, we know, the 800-pound gorilla along with the Big Ten. But now you're seeing Brett Bielema make comments about the SEC strength. Petiti continues to say nothing, which is brilliant. It is a little bit of infighting on what they're going to do, and also 9 conference games, crossover games, etc.
And there's also, to that point, Smokey, there's also so much going on. I mean, there's the playoff, which is sort of galvanized the headlines here. But I mean, you're also at this point waiting for a settlement to come down. It was supposed to be early April. So here we are nearly 2 months fully later, and we still don't have that. So meanwhile, all these preparations are underway in what's going to happen following that, that settlement. But at this point, there's no settlement. So how do you react to a settlement and start, moving forward without the settlement even being finalized? And, and so like, there's so many other pieces to this. There's the transfer portal stuff, a lot of that's coming out about the potential one transfer portal. So, I mean, yeah, it's a lot to navigate. And I think that's why from the Big 12's perspective, like, I think it's a brilliant move by Yormark to not directly address it, but also like there's just so much going on. They're so busy. Like they were in meetings. They had the football coaches in these meetings yesterday for 5 hours straight, like just boom, 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 boom. Lots of things going on. And then as soon as we presented what TuneIn has been doing with the Big 12, like they took off and left after that. So, and they did that earlier in the week with the men's basketball coaches and the athletic directors, the women's basketball coach, the athletic directors. But it was Yormark meeting individually with the football coaches, without the athletic directors, without the chancellors. So I thought that was really interesting too. But there's so much they've got to tackle. There's so much to go on that's going on. I think Yormark is super busy in trying to generate revenue streams and ones that he can get through with board approval. We saw the WWE stuff, so he continues to dig further on the intellectual property stuff, which is great. So the Big 12 has the right man at the controls, and I think you're absolutely right about the way in which the battle from the media perspective is being waged. And right now, it looks like the Big 12 is the bigger man, so to speak.
Yeah, Ari, it's weird that you have to fight they're not really fighting fire with fire, obviously, but they are like, this is the only thing they can do because they don't have the backing. So you just have to have a unified message, which clearly the SEC actually doesn't have right now. The execs are saying one thing, Sankey's saying everything, the coaches want one thing, so the SEC has its own issues of trying to figure out who they want to be too.
So does the Atlantic Coast Conference.
Yeah.
I mean, for once, the Big 12 is the most unified conference in all of college sports. We could thank Texas and Oklahoma for that, right? Like, I think we all thought at first, oh no, they're leaving. That's our cash cow. And what we come to realize now is, man, they were the ones getting in the way of some semblance of uniformity, right? I mean, like, one of the things that we were talking about at the meetings this week was like, what happened if the Big 12 would have just let Texas and Oklahoma walk to the Pac-12? Would A&M still be in the conference? Would Colorado, would Missouri? I mean, Colorado's back, but you know what I mean? Like, would Texas and Oklahoma have left and the conference would have stayed whole? And what would it look like? And I think like a big part of that exercise is just understanding that like the ACC has skewed their conference right now in the same way that the Big 12 did to placate to Texas and Oklahoma. The ACC is doing that in order to survive, but they're going to deal with the same fate that the Big 12 did once Clemson, Florida State, and the big powers there realize that whatever they think they're getting in addition to what other ACC schools are getting is not nearly as much as they need in order to keep up. And that only, by the way, tilts in the favor of the Big 12, versus the ACC in the years moving forward. So, I mean, it is really a breath of fresh air that, like, actually one of the biggest weaknesses of the conference, quote unquote, and losing Texas and Oklahoma has become a huge and pretty significant strength for this conference, because you don't have to deal with people that demand and entities that demand more than what everybody's getting. Everybody's equal partners. Everybody's in terms of involvement, equally involved. Yormark, I think, is speaking to all different sports at a level of trying to continue the involvement there. So, yeah, I mean, and I think, Paul, what you pointed out is really astute in that, like, you hear a unified message that's coming out from the Big 12. You don't hear coaches going rogue and saying something completely different or inarticulate, inconsistent with what the Big 12 brass is saying. Like Brett Yormark mentioned, we like the 5+11 format, and then every athletic director or football coach we had on after the fact mentioned that as well. And yeah, we're not seeing that in the SEC. We're not seeing that in the ACC. We're seeing different messaging. We're not seeing a unified message. So I think there's a lot of strength in that for the Big 12. And it's something that, was very elusive for this conference for a long time.
Oh, Texas is in something and there's not agreement?
Yeah. Craig?
I feel like the Big Ten is like Oklahoma in your scenario, though, Paul, where we've mentioned SEC, ACC,
totally.
Big 12, Big Ten's just
doubt.
sitting there,
Yeah.
and everybody also blames Texas, and Oklahoma is just as guilty.
Yeah.
And I say that as an Oklahoma fan. It's just, it's amazing how
They
Katie's just
skirted,
sitting back, man.
Yeah, they skirted any kinds of. I mean, Texas took all of the bullets, and Oklahoma did the exact same thing. They just followed Texas out the door. And you're right. But in this case, the Big Ten is sort of sliding by here and just kind of a side mention to it. And I do wonder if Sankey and Petiti got together and were like, I'll be the mouthpiece. You kind of just be my lapdog, or if he's just acquiescing to the alpha here. But it is a bizarre set of circumstances. And ultimately, like, Sankey is the villain here. And he's, from a public perception standpoint, being played out that way, which may be a surprise, but he doesn't want to be a villain. He's a reluctant villain. And I think that's why when you push back against that, like, LeBron was also a reluctant villain. And what happens in that case? You become the villain anyways. You look worse off for trying not to be. So I think Sankey's kind of in that position right now.
This is totally off topic, but what do you think about Nigeri Kennedy and Texas Tech up there in the College World Series? Big win, and just what do you make of this run? I mean, obviously, big investment on Tech that's well documented, but hey, this was what you intended, was to be in the College World Series and try to win a national championship. Right.
I mean, if there is in one sport where one player can make that much of a difference, it is a pitcher in softball. And so in that case, Nigeri Kennedy is worth every penny. In fact, she's probably underpaid. I mean, she's dominant. What a fun game to watch last night. And, going back to the strength of this conference, like, Texas and Oklahoma are going to play in a College World Series game tomorrow night. And then the winner takes on the winner of Oregon and Texas Tech. So how about that? And I mean, those were the two powers in this conference, along with Oklahoma State. I know Baylor's had some good years in softball, but the conference is starting to really see other, where the conference was buoyed, it seemed, in most sports by Texas and Oklahoma. like, man, we thought baseball, what a loss that's going to be. Again, Baylor's had some good years in baseball, and Tech, and there's Oklahoma State. Like, there's been good teams, but to get 8 bids for this conference, including Cincinnati and Kansas, man, what an incredible run for this conference in other sports where you thought they're going to miss a lot without Texas and Oklahoma, and softball is certainly front and center for that. And the last thing I'll say on this is one of the more interesting things we talked about with some of the athletic directors at media days at spring meetings was, how do you budget? How are you looking at where you're going to be spending your money? And I mean, Terry Mohajir put it perfectly. He said, every dollar spent elsewhere is a dollar that's not going towards football. And so you're going to have to obviously spend the majority of your money in football, but Texas Tech's in a really good position for this conference overall because they're spending at football, they're spending at softball, they're spending across the board in all sports. And again, the strength of this Big 12, it would be hurting right now without a Texas Tech in the College World Series. So that's also interesting to me. Athletic directors have to make bets now in the sports that they really want to support. And I think it's not all like as black and white as it might appear. Like, if somebody like a Nigeri Canada becomes available and you can have her at a price point, like, that's an investment that's worth something even if you haven't invested in softball previously. So that part of this, capitalism has finally been introduced in college sports. And so now athletic directors are trying to make it all work within their budgets.
All right, man. Good stuff, Ari. Glad you got back. Appreciate your time today. I know you got to go. Appreciate your time. We'll talk to you again soon.
Take care, guys. Always great. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Kim Coulter is giving out super chats. Let me see here. For Garrett, a car payment, $4.99.
Nice.
Andrew, car payment, $4.99.
Hey.
Let's see here. There's another one in there somewhere. Rent payment, $4.99. I just put in the super chat. If you're not in the super chat, you can't do this. I am. I need a new driver that hits the ball longer. Wait for the $4.99. Hey, there has been discussion, and some of you have asked in the chat. We appreciate Ari coming up. We'll have a lot of time between our next guest, I think Mickey, around 4:10 or 15, about why is Petiti so quiet compared to Sankey, or what appears to be behind the scenes. Don't be fooled by this. This is from Mark Schipper, Fifth Down College Football. We've had him on the show before. And it's from Adam Rittenberg talking about how the SEC dominates the media discussion. They're like the NFL among college football. Petiti comes from a TV background where loose lips sink ships, and the entire business is run like a clandestine intelligence agency. Sankey comes from academia where open records and public discussion and consensus building is a way of life. I'd love to get the dialogue between those two. Petiti may very well have said, why the hell would I put all that in the media? I doubt he's intimidated by any academic administrator. He's dealt with real world-class pricks and Machiavellians his entire year. Machiavellians his entire career.
Machiavellians.
That too. Michelob Light.
Nickelodeon.
Did you all see the word that won the spelling bee today? It's unbelievable. I don't know how they do that. But all right, so there. But that's Mark Schipper, who's kind of like why Petiti is more in the background because of how he's grown up in this business.
It's not going to, the other thing is he throws out this 4-4-2-2-1, 1-1-1 thing, and then he just like lets it sit. I think he's going to have to speak to it eventually. He's going to have to do it. And I wouldn't be surprised if Greg Sankey did say, hey man, like, I'm out here taking bullets. Let's hear from you. They had no media at their meetings.
I didn't even know they had their meetings.
It's just, I think there's a difference in how they're publicized. Yeah. I don't think that the big writers in Detroit and in Chicago and in New York and all of these markets that they claim, Los Angeles now, they don't give a damn about college football, guys.
That's true.
They don't. So you compare that to Destin, and it's like a vacation for everybody. Like the media from every market's there, Starkville to, Auburn, Alabama, and all points around and in between. So I think that is as much of just showing you the kind of the difference in the coverage and the passion when it comes to certain aspects of the game. And so I think that's where there's a large difference. There's just so much more media coverage on those meetings in Destin as opposed to the Big Ten meetings, but I also think it's clearly a different approach by the two commissioners as well. And I mean, I think Mark's probably doing some assuming here. I won't give Petitti the benefit of the doubt that he's like that calculated, and he's just like, I mean, I'm sure some of that television experience does come into play, and it's probably why he is quieter than maybe Sankey. But there's probably something more calculated. And let's face it, those two aren't necessarily on the same page on everything.
That's
like,
exactly
remember,
right.
They want to partner up and all this and that, but there's some concessions that have to be made. Talking about concessions, well, the SEC needs to concede to playing another conference game for that partnership to work. And so they're not completely on the same page together. I think they both know that they're more intertwined with each other than they are with anybody else, and they're more alike than they are with anybody else. But that doesn't mean that they're like tag team partners and that they're just going to like be the road warriors together and run roughshod all over college football. I think there are still some differences between the two and I think there's some unique differences between the two. So, yeah, you can start with the approaches of their commissioners. I think I'll default to it just being far more publicized in the Southeast, and there being far more interest in things like this time of year than there is in those types of things out in Big Ten country. All
right, Craig, one note from Jeremiah Dickey. Remember, we had him on earlier this week, and he kind of made that comment at the end of last week. So Jeremiah Dickey, in reaction to all of this data, et cetera, the push for separate autonomous Power 4 divisions that still competes in the NCAA for championships. Good idea. Or is it maybe possible to define the expectations on how to become a P4 conference, understanding many have been grandfathered in or invited based on subjective reasoning? Always a solution, especially when I think of the many fan bases impacted.
Yeah,
that's about those who have been a part of the SEC and the Big Ten or Big 12 or ACC from the beginning.
Well, look, why are some of these schools in these conferences? Because in 1937, they made a smart decision and banded together. And some of the schools that did it in 1937 or whatever are out. Swanee, no longer in the SEC.
Tulane.
Tulane. Yeah, all of that. So because of those things that happened for very different reasons a very long time ago, these schools are set up. Well, I think it's a very fair question for anybody who's outside that to ask, is there any way to get it? Like, if we are motivated financially to do this and raise the kind of funds and do all these things, why can't we be a part of it?
Yeah, I think that's all that he's asking for, and that's a fair question. I mean, if you want people who are invested and want to be a part of this, then how do they become a part of this? Or is this going to be a country club? And if so, then call the lawyers, and then there we go off to the races with more litigation potentially. But I like that Jeremiah is in complete DGAF mode right now and just attacking some of this online. And I think as the athletic director at Boise State, he's in a better spot than probably anybody else of his ilk to be able to pop up and say something and say it with some backing behind what he's saying as well because of Boise State's success over the years. So, if you're going to do the whole soccer concept like some people have been pushing for, and that includes the Super League or whatever, then, there's a part of that includes relegation. And I think that's the part that's always been the trickiest for me to wrap my head around, because I don't see anybody voluntarily getting knocked down a peg or two. And I also think that if you're going to do that, well, then there's got to be teams that can rise up. And Boise State would be as quality of a candidate to do that. That's not in the Power 4 right now as anybody. And I know Washington State, Oregon State, there'd be others as well, Tulane. But yeah, what about those schools? Is there a way for them to get in if they do want to invest the way that the others are investing? That's a valid question from a guy at a school like Boise State. So yeah.
We have a lot more to get to, and we will have 3 guests. I believe it's 3 guests in the next hour. Yeah, we'll have Mickey Spagnola. We'll also have Dave Rumsey, and 5 o'clock, it's Bruce Feldman. John Lennon today.
Well, it was already had him on, right?
When I sent that text out about the guest lineup, who cracked up? Who got the joke when I said 340 John Lennon?
I got it.
Well, I got it. I don't know. Nobody else is going.
I don't think Craig gets those texts. I think he's nuked us on those text messages. But that was in reference to how many times are you going to promote Ari as if he's John Lennon?
You had done it like 5 times. Like you had said it. You would have thought John Lennon was going to rise from the dead and appear on the show because we were updating the availability so often. Like that's where I was just like, we got it. Ari may or may not be on the show. He's great. We love him, but like, my God, it's not Taylor Swift.
We've got Paul and Ringo, and then we can seance in John.
Right.
George is not available via seance.
My favorite Beatle, actually.
So I put out the list. I had Lennon, Paul McCartney, and then I said Freddie Mercury, and you go, well, one of them's not dead. Like, McCartney's still around.
So your favorite Beatles, George?
Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay, cool. Yeah. We have that common.
He always was like
he wrote "Here
normal,
Comes the
wasn't
Sun."
He
wrote "Here Comes the Sun."
He wrote a lot of good songs.
Yeah, that's my favorite one. Is "Here Comes the Sun." Well, it's mostly just his, but I love that song. And
Kim Coulter.
I think he also wrote "Blackbird."
My God.
I don't know. I'm not a Beatles expert like that. I've actually become more of a fan over the last few years than I was when I was younger. But "When My Guitar Gently Weeps" is a great song.
Yeah.
With a little Eric Clapton.
Yeah.
On there on a Beatles record, which is interesting.
Well, Layla, the song by Eric Clapton, Layla. Yeah. That's about George Harrison's wife.
Yes.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Who eventually got with Eric Clapton, and then they had a falling out.
Did I read that Lennon wrote a story because he was mad at McCartney?
I'm sure. Yeah,
he said a lot of things.
It might have been Imagine. I don't know. Yeah. So Kim Coulter, I got to run down these again. He is, oh, dear God. Garrett has rent to pay. Andrew needs new glasses. Andrew has car payments. Mark needs new shoes.
Who's Mark?
I don't know.
Oh, Mark, yeah.
Smoak needs new balls.
Oh, wow.
Craig needs a new Rangers gear. Paul, we all still live in the chat. That's super. Village needs new jeans. Emery needs ivory.
Ivory. Yeah. Like soap?
Ebony and Ivory. Yeah.
Oh, Emery and Ivory. Yeah. By the way, I have a funny, I know it's probably not going to land, but they just had the SNL 50th a couple months ago. And at the end, Martin Short was the one at the goodbyes, like, hey, thanks to everybody. And Paul McCartney was there right next to him. And he said, thanks to Paul McCartney. And you can see it on the video. Fred Armisen runs right up to him and to mess with Martin Short goes, why'd you call him Tony McCartney? And he goes, what? He's like, you called Paul McCartney Tony McCartney. And so Martin Short just caught up, but you can see that panic concern in his face, like, oh my God, I just call him Tony McCartney.
Tony McCartney.
Yeah. He might have had a smoke moment and just, went blank on it. All right, in the 4:00 hour, much to get to. We have a few more stories to get to, too, as far as college football and more. We'll update the college baseball first day of the regional round College World Series up in Oklahoma City with the women in softball. That and more. This is 365 Sports. The Baylor Club inside McLean Stadium, there for you if you want to, have the amenities of what they have. Inside the stadium, the football season's only for, 3 or 4 months of the year, but they're always going. That heartbeat's always in there, hosting banquets and dinners and lunches and more, and also a great place based on their top chefs, a great place to eat. And membership's available. If you go into the Baylor Club and you're not a member, if you mention us at 365 Sports, they will discuss the possibility of maybe you having a month or so, a lot less of a payment for what it's going to cost you to be a member, and some other perks as well. But tell them about 365 Sports. They're one of our sponsors. And then they have certain days during the week, and the chef will get a little bit frisky with wanting to see how a certain dish is accepted by the members. And, man, that's always fun. That's pretty cool to do that, to get feedback from you. We have hosted our Academic All-Stars banquet there every year since COVID, and they do an amazing job with the staff, the food, and so much more, the setup. The Baylor Club inside McLean Stadium off I-35 in Waco.
Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Don's Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. Don's Humidor in the Townwood Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
Ready to take your business to the next level? Carrion Solutions has got you covered. We deliver world-class IT consulting, including Quest On Demand and Migration Manager, M365 and Exchange migrations, Active Directory assessments, security hardening, and Windows Server upgrades. Our experts specialize in consulting, monitoring, support, and managed IT services. We promise vision, professionalism, and unbeatable value. Satisfaction guaranteed. If you're not happy, we make it right. Remember the name Carrion Solutions. For more info, email sales@carrionsolutions.com or visit carrionsolutions.com. That's CARRION solutions.com. Carrion Solutions, IT success guaranteed.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend's Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
Baseball finals from the first day of the regional. Cincinnati beat Wake Forest 11-6.
Go Bearcats.
Louisville beat East Tennessee State 8-3. Florida got pummeled by East Carolina 11-6, and North Carolina shut out Holy Cross 4-0. There's a lot of games going on right now. Arizona early over Cal Poly 3-0. Let me see here. Paul, Florida State, Bethune-Cookman tied at 2 apiece.
It's in a weather delay.
Yep. TCU down 6-1 to TCU, down to 6-1 to USC. That game's up in Corvallis.
West Virginia tied at 3 with Kentucky in the bottom of the 7th. Texas up 7-1, about to finish out Houston Christian.
Yep.
Austin.
Texas hit a line drive to center field. The fence was down, and they just kept running. I'm kidding. That did a great job overnight with horrible weather on Wednesday night that basically blew down the center field at Dish Falk Field. And a lot of people worked around the clock, did a great job to keep that on schedule. Texas, you're right, 7-1 over Houston Christian.
Yeah, that's kind of what's going on. I mean, there's some other scores. We're just not going to go over every single one of them, but do have later on tonight, we'll have, in terms of games of interest, Oklahoma State and Duke out in Athens. You've got also Nebraska, Oklahoma.
Get it.
There at 6 o'clock in Chapel Hill. Kansas State, UTSA down the way in Austin. And Kansas, Creighton. I mean, I'll go ahead and point out Dallas Baptist, go DBU, taking on Rhode Island tonight at 9 o'clock on ESPN Plus out in Baton Rouge. Arizona State at UC Irvine. And you mentioned Cincy winning earlier today. So there's just kind of the regional games going on right now.
The Anteaters and the Sun Devils in a game out in L.A. Also tomorrow in the softball up in Oklahoma City after a dramatic opening day. Talked a lot about Texas and OU. They're going to play each other. That's in a winner's bracket. There's 2 games going on tonight in the elimination round.
I'll tell you what, I know most of the audience probably doesn't give 2 whatevers about softball, although the Tech fans probably do more than ever right now, which is understandable. But that Oklahoma finish against Tennessee was just absolutely incredible. And the way Patty Gasso's teams just always seem to have an answer. It's they've found a way to make a sport that maybe isn't very I don't know. I'll just speak for myself. It's not a sport that I've paid a lot of attention to, but they've made me pay more attention to it, if that makes sense.
Well, they're a dynasty. And
yeah, obviously.
And Texas Tech and UCLA late last night beat Oregon. So Tech and UCLA, that's tomorrow afternoon, Oklahoma, Texas. That, of course,
that'll be a hell of a game.
Oklahoma.
That'll be a hell of a game, Oklahoma and Texas.
They've played each other a bunch.
No,
Texas has gotten them a few times, but man, they're trying to continue that run, and what a great run for Texas Tech. And of course, we mentioned yesterday Oklahoma State winning the men's golf title midweek. Now, so here's one of the things, and you guys tell me if I'm looking at this wrong. And Garrett and I discussed this a little bit earlier. We're going to hear from Yormark about the Power Four getting more oomph, more of a percentage of the votes among all of the other schools when it comes to the Division I. So here we have the Big 12 and the ACC a little bit maybe perturbed or a little bit. Wait a minute. Why can't we get as much as the Big 10 or the SEC, despite the fact they have better ratings, more eyeballs, bigger stadiums, more success, etc.?
Despite you just explaining exactly why they don't have as much as those two.
Okay. Then why then should the Big 12 and or the ACC feel the way they do when they themselves are trying to separate from those elsewhere in the NCAA because they have more eyeballs because they're a part of the Autonomy Four?
I'm glad you brought this up because I've actually thought about it. It is very hypocritical.
It is. Okay.
I mean, it's extremely hypocritical.
It absolutely is.
And I've thought about this for a while now, but it's kind of like pick your timing of when to bring it up because like with Ari, I'd actually thought about it and I was like, well, I don't know if this is the place to really bring that up because we're kind of going a certain direction with it. But no, I absolutely have thought about that. And so, the same people who are afraid of getting left behind by Virginia or a much bigger school like an Ohio State, whatever falls in the parameters of the, I guess not Virginia, but getting left behind by Florida or Ohio State or whatever in those two leagues, they're also going like, ew, Oregon State, gross, get away. We don't want you in our league. There is definitely a little bit of hypocrisy going on, and I don't know how many people have probably stopped down to realize it because they're so forward focused on the lead pack that they're not paying attention to the fact that they're like trying to kick off the ones that are trying to keep up with them. And it's no different, really. It's no different. You're just very fortunate that you, for the time being, were still large enough and influential enough to have some say. And I know there's a Texas State tweeter that I see. Like Twitter now, it's not even the people you follow. It's like what Twitter says that you are supposed to like or what they want you to like basically is half the timeline now. So I see like this constant Texas Tech Twitter account or Texas State Twitter account that brings up that point of like, what about us? Like, what about us? And I hate to inform them that it's like, buddy, you're just not in the equation right now. And you probably won't ever be. I'm not going to be the one to break that to you because it should be obvious at this point. But yeah, it's very valid that you're doing the same thing you're accusing the others of doing. And that's kind of the world and how it works, right? Like when
it's okay when we do.
Exactly. That's what I mean. Yeah, it's exactly right. That's how it seems to be. It's like, well, it's bad when they did it, but when I do it, that's a different story.
I'm doing it for the right reasons. They did it for the wrong ones.
And I've been wanting, in fact, Garrett and you and I talked about this. And so today, Brett Yormark was asked about the P4 or Autonomy 4 takeover, so to speak.
Discussions in the Division I task force about all aspects of that model. It's a complicated, going from a really complex model to a much simpler model. And clearly the voting percentages have been an important part of that conversation. I think we've had really open, honest discussions about it on the task force from folks both in the power conferences as well as those outside. And I think there's a recognition by many, certainly not by all, as you know, that the power conferences drive a lot of the viewership, a lot of the revenue. And so in that regard, there's probably a place for them having heavier weighting. We currently have heavier weighting in voting in the NCAA as the structure is now. This would just strengthen that some. It certainly doesn't give those conferences complete autonomy over everything that happens and requires collaboration and partnership. So I think it helps sort of recognize the role those conferences play across the NCAA while also giving voice to others in the process. So we'll see where we get to on it. We've got meetings coming up in the next couple of weeks, but I would say so far it's been a really collaborative and open discussion. I think we'll continue to see that as we refine what that ultimately looks like in the next few weeks.
Generally speaking, and I do speak on behalf of my colleagues, there is an appetite and desire to have a little bit more autonomy, a little bit more control in decision making. In what's currently being discussed, I think we will land in a very desirable place. We understand the importance of being part of the institution and also being very collegial with our peers. But at the same time, we do feel that when it comes to control and autonomy, that there needs to be a little bit of a shift to the A4, at least more so than it currently exists. And those are the conversations that we're having right now.
The other thing I would say about the structure we're working on is to make it much flatter and hopefully much more efficient. It's one of the biggest criticisms of the decision-making processes in the NCAA is how convoluted and complex and how long they take. And so that's also part of the intent here, is to make it a much flatter structure, a cleaner structure, get rid of a lot of committees so that we can make decisions much, much more quickly. And in the world we live in where things change regularly, we've got to be much more efficient about how we make decisions.
And Ben, I'll just also add that, Charlie Baker's been terrific throughout the process. He has listened to all the key stakeholder groups, but he does recognize that not everyone looks the same, operates the same, and there needs to be a bit of an adjustment and a modernization of what's being done there. The NCAA on a whole, as I said, but also as it relates to the Power Four.
All right, so that's both Brett Yormark, Big 12 commissioner, and Dr. Linda Livingstone, who's in her last year now as a part of governance of the Big 12. And she's also been a part of the NCAA governance as well, with their answers on that. But yeah, you heard Yormark discuss what the SEC and Big Ten are supposed to make sure that they're collegial with everybody else in discussing the college football playoff format moving forward. And he said that, well, we're being collegial with all the others, but yes, but we do want more of the pie, which is different than what, when it looks at the power structure between the Big Ten, SEC, and the other conferences can be.
I mean, I do think there's some part of this where, it's pretty obvious that they're doing the same thing they're accusing others of doing in some ways, but also it was not a better functioning world when Southeast Missouri State could be standing in the way of Alabama trying to make a decision on the college football playoff. I also think that that's something that is in need of change and is obviously is changing. And so there will have a different governing structure and those types of things. Not that you want to get rid of Southeast Missouri State for just throw out a random school, but yeah, I do think that's a valid complaint that people had that we started hearing a couple of years ago out of the SEC in particular, of why are we're getting bogged down on not accomplishing anything because schools that have no say really in the ultimate end game are, afraid of being left behind or whatever. So I can understand that it wasn't the best system and it needs to tilt a different direction for those who are the haves to take control, grab the reins, and make sure it gets led somewhere. Because if you just do everybody's equal, then it just stays where it was and nothing gets accomplished. And the bigger, big picture moves forward that the sport needs to make don't get made because people who are playing in two different stratospheres are trying to come to an agreement when they are never going to, because they live in two different worlds. So I think that's something that is particularly the NIL era kicked off. You had that gulf that widened between the has and the has not. So I understand trying to grab the reins and go in a different direction. But yeah, you do need to also acknowledge that it is somewhat hypocritical if you've been complaining about being left behind. Yeah.
Yeah. I like to combine the last two topics of I think that there should be the P4 autonomy, and there also should be a way for teams that want to play on that level to get there.
Like Boise State.
Like the Pac-12 wants to get back to it. Look, Sacramento State's making investments in things. They want to get there. So, I think that there's something to be said for that. But it's to make it a country club that you can't get into, I think is really hypocritical and bad, especially when you've got teams that want to play, like they want to be in that. You should let them try to do that. That's only good.
Yeah, but bottom line is all of what everyone said. There's a lot of different. Well, sometimes we get to the point now where no, you're wrong or you're wrong, but it is the same overall thought that we're bigger than you, so we should get more than you. And yet, when it comes to conferences and college football playoff formats and whatever else, yeah, you're bigger than us, but we should get pretty much the same as you. Although it does seem as if there's some give and take. It's Ari mentioned this, so much going on right now outside of how are you going to win a national championship in football and who's going to get that chance to do it as well. You want to take a break here, Garrett? Mickey Spagnola, Dave Rumsey from Front Office Sports. He'll join us around 4:40 or so today. Bruce Feldman at 5 and a great article from theathletic.com on college football coaches who make play calls. That and more. This is 365 Sports.
Alan Samuels House of Travel is a full-service travel agency with highly experienced travel consultants plus support staff with over a combined 150 years in the travel business. They are ready to take care of any travel situation for you, your family, and your business, and with the kind of knowledge to complete a seamless itinerary trip start to finish. They will search for the best deal to accommodate your budget from air to cars, ship to shore, hotel, and even meeting space. Name a destination and they've been there. They know the places to go, and international and missionary travel is one of their unique specialties. Alan Samuels House of Travel, celebrating 50 years in business. Call Connie, Sherry, Linda, or Bambi at 254-776-2560 or find them on Facebook or at houseoftravelwaco.com. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at alliancebanktexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
Want to send a message to the show? Jump in the Rudy's Country Store and Barbecue chat room.
.365 Sports. Shooter TX. If they reduce the number of teams with access to the playoffs to, let's say, less than 40, they will lose millions of fans. What if Baylor's locked out or K-State or Iowa State? He didn't mention them, but we've discussed that before. I will quit watching college football on TV and only watch men's basketball and the NFL. Screw ESPN. Well, Fox will be a part of that too, although that depends on the networks. The ESPN owns the rights to the college football playoff.
Yeah. ESPN gets a lot of flack, and they earn a lot of flack. I'm not saying that they don't, but much like the Big Ten, SEC, like all of that, like it all goes in together. Like, you know, Fox and CBS are not innocent in this either. The CBS could have got involved in Big 12 negotiations years ago, right? Like they've got a bunch of channels, but they didn't. They could have gotten involved in the ACC. The ACC, does everything the SEC does. 8 games. Oh, we're going to get a network and all this. And then,
but they rarely take the same kind of heat for it.
Well, they do it and then they're not as successful. And then, you hear dumb things of the ACC saying like, oh, we need a fine bomb. Well, you can't just make a fine bomb. Like this dude, he didn't just happen upon it. This is not, and I'm not a big fan of the guy, but he also didn't happen onto 15 minutes of fame. He worked really hard for it. He worked really hard at being a propagandist for the SEC. You can't just be like, all right, well, who's the most famous media person who's an ACC homer and give them the job and hope it's going to affect it. But they kind of do everything the SEC does. They just don't do it as well. And they don't have the amount of brands and focus. So, yeah, I don't know. Like everybody bats on, but there's, like we talked about in the last week, there's a lot of hypocrisy that goes on when it's like, it's okay when they do it, or this is the real villain. No, there's more than one villain.
I also do think that, and I have seen, and Brett Yormark has discussed this, he did earlier today, about the access and the ability to promote them. That are they getting that from the two networks in ESPN and Fox? I know that the TV games are being split, TNT, whoever else, but are they also getting the same kind of background? And yet again, if those networks want more eyeballs, why would you not promote someone who is a part of your network?
That's what confuses me particularly about ESPN, where and maybe it's just they have to funnel things so many different ways because they have so much, and that they just have to really, push the stuff that is tracking for them through focus groups. And
push was popular.
That's
what brings eyeballs.
But also they don't they found with the WNBA, not like Caitlin Clark has been a revelation for the league and a player that everybody's excited about, but she's not the first fantastic player they've had, and she's the one, though, that made it popular in the social media era. And now they're finally starting to promote that. I was always kind of surprised with the ACC being there. Like, look, they don't have to promote it like the SEC, but they don't even try to get in that realm.
Yeah, I think the WNBA, Caitlin Clark's a once-in-a-lifetime type of player, and she happens to have some other players that are of interest to a certain extent. But yeah, she's a phenomenon. There's not another her just that's going to walk in after she's done necessarily, and there wasn't really a person quite like her just before. She is a unicorn, I think, in a lot of ways. So they're going full blast with her, and I get why are we talking about Feinbaum? And by the way, that's how it's actually pronounced, but I think he's been Southernized. Feinbaum.
I was talking about how the ACC kind of does everything the SEC does, just doesn't do it well. And then they have these dumb ideas about let's have another Feinbaum, let's have another Paul, and you can't just create that.
I hate for the guys that do the ACC network because clearly they're not making as much of an impact on people's minds as he is.
Yeah, but you hear that, but it's also the guy's been in radio for 40 years of doing it and doing it the same way. You can't just decide to start from go and catch up.
Yeah, I walked in on that because I was in the men's room, but he's also unique. There's not just you can't just go let's do the Big 12 version of this guy. Well, you know what? You got to have the audience for it. If there's an audience for it, then I think ESPN would be willing to invest. But part of well, why don't they promote this? It's because they probably tried to, and they realized they're not getting the return on investment. Whereas you promote SEC or whatever, and they know there's a whole network that's been super successful. And it's at some point we just get knowledge. It's different there, guys. It is. It's just different. And not everybody can be them on every level. You can go and win some titles, but you can't have the same fan coverage and the same attention on your meetings week because, like we said, the Big Ten had theirs, and nobody even knew basically that they were going on because most of the media there didn't give a damn.
Yeah.
But in the South, it's different, and so at some point it just means more is real, it is. And so for as much complaint as there is about those guys, I do think sometimes you got to tap the brakes because in a lot of ways they have earned that attention. And there is such a passion there that it's not something that you can just scan and place it on somebody else.
It's in their blood.
It's in their blood. It really does just mean more. That's not just a slogan. And
there's a reason why their stadiums are all huge.
Yes, and for those that it didn't, and now it does. I think Texas and Oklahoma, you see a difference in just their fan bases already, and how much of a passion that they now feel they've walked into that matches their own, where maybe they didn't always feel that way in the Big 12 or in various other leagues. So I at some points, I think there can be too much criticism, and sometimes there can be too much wishful thinking that everybody can be like everybody else in every way. And you're just never going to have a Big 12 Feinbaum. You're just never going to have, or most likely you're not going to, but it's certainly not something that's going to happen because you just pluck a guy and say like, all right, you do that, because then you still got to be able to pull in the audience. And that's something that he's been doing for decades. So I'm not the biggest fan, because I do think there's some propaganda a lot of the time, but I think that's also just wholly unique in that part of the country versus other parts.
And that's why when people say, like, let's just start another one.
Yeah.
I hear it like in the political realm, like, hey, the Democrats need a Rogan. Like, dude's been out there forever.
He's been out there for 30 years.
Yeah, he's been out there for 30 years doing a lot of different things. Like, you can't just make, it's got to be, you could do these shows and try to promote them, but if they don't bring the numbers in, it's going to disappear. Denzel Washington's not available for this movie. Who's the other Denzel Washington? There is no one. Yeah, there is no one else. A couple of guys in the chat, Craig with Truth Serum. Let's see here. I know we got Mickey. A couple of other notes about what you liked about our discussion we just had in that last segment. We're now joined by Mickey Spagnola. Dave Rumsey of Front Office Sports will join us in the next segment. Mickey, thank you so much. So I know they're playing basically in shorts and T-shirts or whatever. And I see the stories that the team was taken on a paintball battle or whatever else. It's a new coach. Do you see, or is it just because there's nothing else to report, any kind of changes in the last week or two? I don't give a damn about who the starting linebacker is, but overall, this the feel.
Yeah, I think the one thing that we've been able to recognize so far, and you're right, but by the way, they wear jerseys. They don't wear T-shirts, okay?
All right.
Which helps us because they've got numbers and names on it, right? So there's so many new guys here. No real change. It's more of the same. You get an opportunity to watch George Pickens at work. You get an opportunity to see Tyler Booker. But again, there's no contact. And really, even when they go 11 on 11 or 7 on 7, the offense versus the defense, it's not supposed to be competitive, meaning the defensive guys aren't supposed to go up and compete for the pass or try to knock it down. It's almost like practicing against the practice squad. So from that point, but we can see if guys can run, we can see if their hips turn, things like that. And to add another layer to what Brian Schottenheimer has been doing to try to develop this culture, which all sounds fine and good in the offseason. Today, he sort of had an alumni day. He invited the former players that have played for the Cowboys for more than 5 years to come back and not only watch practice and have lunch with the players, but to get involved in the team meeting and the position meetings. I mean, there are guys, these young kids, they might not know who Bob Lilly and Randy White are, but they were here today, along with the likes of Michael Irvin and just a host of other guys. Charles Haley, although Haley comes here quite a bit, Everson Walls, Drew Pearson, Tony Dorsett, by the way. I hadn't seen Tony in a while, and he was moving around pretty good, looking good. So again, what he was trying to do is show that, hey, this franchise has had a history. These guys have won Super Bowls, and look, these guys are still friends after all these years, and maybe it meant something about the camaraderie they had when they were here playing ball.
I would. The only thing I would regret about bringing Randy White in is that here's a guy in his 70s that may make some of the guys feel like they're less than because he still looks like a train.
Well, they kept him from going out there and trying to show him just what to do, right? And Dave Campo was here too, by the way. Which
love Dave Campo.
Yeah, and Camps told me, the ability to go in there and listen to the team meeting and just kind of witnessed the energy these young new assistant coaches have. He said it was really good to get a feel. Larry Cole, we were talking run defense, and he's been paying attention, and he was talking about how important that was for the success they had there in the late 60s and through the 70s for sure.
Mickey,
hold on, Paul.
Oh, sorry.
In the chat room, so many people were going, you were listing players that some of them did not know still were alive.
I don't. Look, I'll tell you this.
Come on, we're still alive.
Yeah, Randy White's not going to die. No. I mean, I don't think he's going to. Like that, I saw him a couple years ago at a Texas Sports Hall of Fame thing, and outside of his hair being white, I wouldn't have thought he was old.
And you know what? The other thing is they were so glad to be here, right?
I bet.
Because a lot of them, they've not been here at this facility. I remember the first time. I don't know if you guys remember the name John Fitzgerald. He was the former center for the Cowboys.
Sure.
He was here within the last 6 months, and he was getting a tour around here, and somebody told me, hey, he was here, and I went and ran into him, and I said, so did they take you here? Did they take you there? He goes, no. I said, come on. And he was in a wheelchair, and he told me the only reason I'm in this wheelchair, I can walk, I just can't walk long distances, right? So I took him into the locker room. I said, how's this look to the old facility at Forest and Abrams? And he was just astounded of what they had compared to the little wooden lockers they had there that had on the sides ashtrays just in case anybody wanted to have a smoke.
Mickey, the backup quarterback situation is, I think a lot of people took Brian Schottenheimer out of context about the word developmental, like everybody's developing. But when you look at Joe Milton, Will Greer, those are the guys who are going to be competing for those backup snaps. What do you think the different approach will be with the backup quarterbacks now that you don't have someone like Cooper Rush who had a ton of time and experience?
I'll put it this way, at this point.
Yeah.
Because I still think they got their eyes on what might be available in the coming weeks or months. Guys that at least have some experience winning and losing games in the league. I mean, Will Greer hadn't played in a regular season game since 2019. And Joe Milton has played in as a rookie last year, only one. It was the final game of the season against Buffalo, and I saw where everybody was making a big deal out of he won. Buffalo didn't play anybody. So that's not a lot of experience when you think about backup quarterbacks because they don't get to work once the season begins. They're not taking any snaps. Dak's getting all the first team snaps. And basically for a successful backup quarterback, they got to rely on their experience and their preparation. And these guys have no experience, and they're just probably figuring out what they have to do to be prepared just in case. So having said that, I just think I'm going to go back to Stephen Jones saying that player acquisition is 365 days a year, and we're still 97 days away from the season opener.
I saw this note, and again, a lot of things can be. People are thirsty for information. How has Pickens and his rapport with CeeDee Lamb been? Is it where Lamb is taking him under his wings, or does Pickens even have to do that?
Yeah, no, I think it's been fine. I see them. There was a reaction in practice. I guess it was when did we watched Thursday, right? And there was a play they ran, and Pickens made like an over the head catch in the end zone, and CD threw his hands up in the air, both arms, like, look at that, this is what I got finally, right? Somebody to play with me. It's been fine. As a matter of fact, yesterday in the locker room, we were just sitting around shooting the breeze with Dak, and and George Pickens was sitting right there and kind of piping in, and he was pretty affable. And they were talking college football and guys that he grew up in Hoover, Alabama, and then didn't go to Alabama, went to Georgia, right? And he seemed like a really nice guy, and him and Dak were interacting. So at this point, it seems to be just fine. I think both guys realize the benefit they're going to have with the other guy there, because if you look at who George Pickens was playing in Pittsburgh, he didn't have another receiver next to him like CeeDee Lamb, and I'll guarantee you Dak Prescott's the best quarterback he's ever had.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Mickey, which former first-round pick that they got at the bargain bin shopping this year, whether it's Kaiir Elam or maybe Kenneth Murray, who do you
Solomon
think?
Thomas.
Who do you think has the most potential to have the impact that they want?
Well, all I know is if we look at this past year, Kenneth Murray led the Titans in tackles with 95. I don't know if they thought they just needed to get younger, or they wanted to get, maybe shed a base salary. But I still think this guy has got something. Now, I saw somebody kind of critiquing him. I forgot what site. Everybody's got a critique, right? And said that he grades low in pass coverage. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't care who he's covering. I want him to run downhill and make a tackle on defense. And if he can come up with 95 tackles, I'm good with that. So I think, he's the guy that you want to step up, because right now with, Overshown, probably not going to be ready till I think he may have mentioned Thanksgiving. It's Maris Leaf-Fowl, Kenneth Murray, and Jack Sanborn as your top three linebackers. And so they really need Murray, I think, to ball out. Now, Solomon Thomas, he's got a few years on him, but as a rotational defensive tackle, I think certainly can help. And then I think the jury's out on Elam, although right now with no Diggs out there, and Revel still rehabbing his torn ACL, he's one of the guys that's been working with the first team defense outside cornerback.
Mickey, thank you very much for jumping on a Friday. We appreciate it again. Have a great weekend. We'll see you. Well, things kind of slow down, and then we'll see you, of course, have you on a lot during training camp too. Thank you.
Sounds good. All right, David. Take care.
Thank you, Mickey Spagnola with us. DallasCowboys.com, and a lot of names of the past. When we come back, David Rumsey of Front Office Sports sat down with Brett Yormark, who we heard from a little bit today in a presser in Orlando at Big 12 spring meetings. He's next. This is 365 Sports. What a weekend to wrap up the month for May. Allen Samuels, Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. The May Madness. Final days. Right now, brand new 2024 Jeep Wrangler Rubicon. Sticker price is $64,065. Your price $49,945. You heard that right, about $14,000 off the brand new Rubicon. How about the stunner of 2024 Jeep Grand Cherokee 4x4? Sticker price just under $47,600. Yours today, $38,999. 2025 Ram 1500 Laramie Crew Cab. 4-wheel drive, fully loaded, MSRP over $71,000. Today you pay $56,985. Need to haul something with a big load? How about the brand new 2024 Ram 3500 Cummins Turbo Diesel? Cummins Turbo Diesel. Automatic, price at $52,990. $52,990 for a diesel is unbelievable. Allen Samuels, Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. Loop 340 east of 84 in Waco.
Automatic Chef is your local vending, office coffee, and micro market provider, delivering outstanding service to break rooms all over Central Texas for over 50 years. Automatic Chef brings the best products to your location at the best prices. With hundreds of choices in fresh food, coffee, snacks, and drinks, let Automatic Chef tailor a break room solution to your needs. Make break time great again with Automatic Chef. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchef.com.
Baylor alumni are more than 160,000 strong. When we all join hands to support our university, we don't just move the needle, we move mountains. Working together, we create life-changing opportunities for students on the field, in the classroom, in the laboratory, and in life for generations to come. So get connected, get involved. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
Penny Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help is finally here. Semaglutide, affordable, highly effective. Google search Penny Clinic Waco and reach out to the Penny Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Penny to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pennycliniclowt.com.
This is 365 Sports. Enjoying the show? Hit the like button and subscribe.
Quick note, baseball regionals, although there's a replay coming up, a review. West Virginia just beat, 4-3? And there's a replay to see whether or not there was a catch made or not. Craig, you were watching it when it happened.
Yeah, West Virginia, Kentucky is who they're playing.
Okay.
Appears to have won 4-3. Sacrifice line drive to center field. Brings home the man from third to win, although they're reviewing whether he took off early. It doesn't appear that he did, but they're reviewing it because Kentucky called for the review. So we'll see in a few seconds. But it appears as though West Virginia just knocked off Kentucky 4-3.
Making sure the runner didn't leave early. We are joined by Dave Rumsey, front office sports, who sat down with Commissioner Brett Yormark at the spring meetings in Orlando. I reached out to Dave earlier. Jim Williams, by the way, said hi, too. He and I shared some information, our good friend of ours. Dave, when you sat down, and we heard a little bit from Yormark again today, but nothing really more than what he had said to you, and you had others as well. What was your overall take on his mood and where he is when it comes to the confidence in the Big 12?
Well, outwardly, he is very confident about the Big 12, which, I mean, I guess you would expect, right? The leader of a conference. And he's been that way for the past 3 years. And he just received another 3-year extension this year. So, yeah, outwardly, publicly, he's very optimistic, upbeat about the conference, showing no signs that he's worried. Now, I don't know if you would maybe go that far behind closed doors, especially considering what's going on with the Big Ten and SEC. But, yeah, all smiles and sunshine for him.
So were you surprised that what once was so bullish on private equity and all these things was now very, very cool? Even something that seemed a little bit simpler is naming rights to the conference.
Yeah, no, it was interesting. When that came out last year, as I'm sure you guys remember, I think it was the Big 12 Media Days last summer, last July, and Yormark was very bullish, like you were just saying, on we want to be the first conference to bring in a private equity partner. We think we can sell our naming rights, bring in all this cash. And they got a lot of people excited about how they could maybe compete with the Big Ten and SEC despite not having quite as lucrative of media rights deals or having the big brand names that those other conferences have. So yeah, I think we all thought it was kind of a done deal with the way they were talking about it last year, at least the way Brett Yormark was. And nothing really ever happened. So when I learned I was going to get some one-on-one time with Commissioner Yormark, I was just thinking, hey, I don't really know what the update is here. I never heard anything one way or the other. So I really appreciated his candidness to kind of tell us where that is at. And yeah, a little surprising, but not too surprising given that when you do these type of things, you have to talk to the university presidents and chancellors, and they answer to their boards and athletic directors. And it's a lot to get something like that approved from all ends. So I understand why maybe they had to table it for now.
Dave, just what kind of your impressions of sitting down with him? And just he's a East Coast kind of a fast talker, but not necessarily who you'd have pegged for the Big 12 when they were making that decision. But he's made his home there. Just kind of what are your impressions of just chatting it up and a guy who's obviously had a lot of experience in sports?
I think he's great for the conference. Obviously, he made a huge move early in his tenure by kind of muscling out the Pac-12, if you will, getting that media rights deal done for the Big 12 with Fox and ESPN that kind of made it so that there was not really any room for the Pac-12 to get a media rights deal, and that kind of led to their demise. So I think in one sense, he's been great. He helped the Big 12 survive, grow to 16 teams now. Yes, they're not the Big 10 or the SEC, but I think it could be argued, at least for football, they're in a better spot than the ACC is moving forward. So yeah, certainly he's not a college football lifeblood, doing this for his entire life. He came from a lot of other stops, Rock Nation, the Brooklyn Nets. So yeah, he's been around the block and an interesting character for the Big 12. But like I said, just got an extension, and he seems to be really loving the challenge of trying to compete, even though they're not the top dog like an SEC or Big 10.
You sat down with him. Is this the first time you've ever interviewed him?
First time I've interviewed him.
Okay,
yes.
We've had him on. We were fortunate. We've had him on a handful of times. We'll see him in Frisco at Big 12 Media Days in July. But one of the things I liked about him is when he was talking, it seemed like everything he said was not programmed, that it's not something that he's corporate, even though he's been a part of that in a way. Is that what you got the feeling with as well, that he was looking you eye to eye and this is exactly how he felt?
Yeah, I think when it comes to certain things, like for the college football playoff, for example, he has his messaging down there. They support the 5+11 model. So he's kind of, when you get those type of questions, he's not going to give you too much more because that's just really all he can say, whether it's a one-on-one or a press conference or text message or whatever. But yeah, when we're starting to get into the kind of businessy things that I was asking about, whether it's the private equity or the naming rights deal that, maybe wasn't as discussed by many others until we brought it up this week. Yeah, he's very candid. And yeah, I think he realizes that for the Big 12, they're not, I keep bringing up the Big 10 and SEC, but he has to approach everything differently. And that includes media and fans and being open and being honest. So I think that definitely is his approach when he's trying to get his message out in whatever way that is.
Dave, what is your personal take on where this should go and where you think it will go when it comes to the CFP?
So I think it's pretty clear at this point after this week that we're going to go to 16 teams for 2026. If I had to put money on it right now, I would say it's going to be that 5+11 model with the top 5 conference champions and then 11 at-large bids. Although it seems like there may still be some pushback from Big 10 schools and or some SEC schools, but that seems to me like the most logical thing. Let's grow to 16. That's going to be more on-campus home games. You're not going to have to worry about first-round buys anymore. And keep in mind, I was talking about this with Commissioner Yormark, the revenue sharing and the distribution is changing in 2026 anyways. So right now we have this kind of performance-based system where if you make it to the next round, your conference gets a little bit more money. But really in the future, it's not going to be as based as much around that, and more so just the SEC and the Big Ten are going to kind of get their share, which is going to be the majority, and then everybody else. So it's really just fighting for relevance and getting your schools in there. You're not worried about the extra $4 million payout if you make it to the next round. So yeah, I think 16 for sure. And if I had to put money on it, I would say that 5+11 model that they've been discussing this week. But as with everything with college football playoff related, it can get crazy, and sometimes things kind of come out of nowhere and happen quickly. So I wouldn't hold myself to that, I guess I should say.
Dave, you asked him the question about the private equity. Going back to that, was there good value available if you were ready to take that next step? Have you heard otherwise, or did you know whether or not that they got at least a lot of interest that might lead, as you mentioned, to something, or he did down the road?
Yeah, and you know, the way he said it was, well, it depends on what your definition of value is. And I believe him on that, because I do think that there was probably multiple private equity firms that were willing to put up hundreds of millions of dollars. You know, the reporting last summer was up to $1 billion for, I think, around 20% stake in the conference, or their commercial rights, however you want to split that up. So yes, I think there was a lot of money to be had. But going back to what I was saying earlier, I think Yormark was probably like, hey, let's do it. You know, let's push forward with this new age. And it's just hard to get, you know, he's referenced to me, you know, the Big 12's board, which is a bunch of university presidents and chancellors and other officials and things like that, who might have a little bit more old school mentality. And, you know, he says that they are now focused on other revenue streams, maybe more commercial deals, other sponsorships that they can sell that's not selling the name of their conference or letting private equity own, you know, taking an ownership stake in them. So I think the value was there, but I think there just might have been the hesitance from the Big 12's leaders and the people that had to approve it to actually go forward with it.
Do you think the NFL's foray into private equity had anything to do with their change? You know, because the NFL did that this year as well.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, you would think that because the NFL has now done it, and it seems to be, you know, multiple teams have done it now, and, you know, nothing has gone wrong so far for them. I know private equity gets a bad rap of, you know, coming in and maybe destroying businesses, or, you know, just capitalizing on them and then, you know, selling off. So if anything, you would think that if the NFL can do it, then colleges would want to follow suit. But I think we're just still in this such weird time of, yes, college sports, especially football and basketball, are becoming more professionalized, and you have GMs and front offices more so in college programs, more so now than ever. They look like professional programs, but they're still universities, and we're still waiting on this house settlement and revenue sharing. So I think as they get more professionalized, then it might be easier to take that step of, hey, it's not as big of a deal to bring in a private equity partner if somebody wants to give us some capital in that way.
College athletic departments are bringing in more money than anyone could ever have imagined. And of course, you have the house settlement that's still sitting out there, which could be a $20.5 million hit. But then the expansion of the men's basketball tournament, most of us are not for that. We feel like, why mess with a good thing? But they are looking to find money. I saw the title, media exec on Matt. This is with you and also Michael McCarthy. Media exec on March Madness expansion, potential chump change. So, I mean, is that they're going to be able to write whatever they want to get?
Yeah, no, I think what that means is the CBS, the NCAA is hoping to bring in some more revenue by adding these extra games with the March Madness NCAA tournament. And maybe CBS and TNT don't see as much of a value, just like you're saying, hey, we don't want this. They might be saying, the media companies that have the media rights, hey, we don't need this. We're good. So if you want to expand, we might give you a little bit more money, but we're not going to be paying up big time for these early round games. You know, obviously if we go up to 76 and it's just some more playing games instead of the first 4, you know, we end up having the first 8 or, you know, whatever it is. And you're going to have a lot more of those kind of bubble teams from your SEC, from Big Ten, your Power 4 conferences that aren't getting in now, because this isn't going to really affect the automatic qualifiers. Those are still going to get in and slotted. So I get where they're coming from. Do we really need more games on that Tuesday and Wednesday of March Madness leading into the, craziness, mayhem that is Thursday and Friday of the first round of the NCAA tournament every year? And yeah, certainly the NCAA and the conferences would like a little bit more money. But yeah, to your point, I mean, as Baker's comments came out this week, when I tweeted them out, the replies and the quote tweets were just hilarious because everybody just did not want it to happen and made their opinions very clear.
All right, last thing, and we'll let you go. And thanks for joining us. A great article today. Part of your bio, you can find David on the golf course, usually getting as many strokes as possible. Who wants to shoot a low score anyway? Did you play today wearing that hat and the golf shirt you're wearing today?
No, unfortunately not today, but got plenty of golf shirts. So, they're comfortable, right?
No, yeah. That's what I wear.
It's like wearing an athletic clothes, but it looks nicer with the collar on it. But yeah, love to play golf, talk about golf, write about golf anytime I can.
Hey, man, thanks for joining us today. Great stuff, but we'll have you on again, okay?
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you. Dave Rumsey with Front Office Sports. And by the way, when I reached out to Amanda Kristovich, who's been on vacation, I asked about get the contact number. Dave came back to me really quickly, and she's almost back. And she said, yeah, I took a vacation. And, of course, she's so thrilled the house settlement did not come through while she was away. But obviously a lot of things did.
By the way, West Virginia won. The replay held up the catch in center field, so West Virginia wins, and they are in the Clemson Regional, and so they will play the winner of USC Upstate and Clemson, which is going to be coming up, I guess, here now. So, yeah, they'll play the winner of that game tomorrow at 6. So,
all right.
I don't know if that's East time or not, but sometime there, 5 or 6 tomorrow.
Two Big 12 teams advanced. Cincinnati advancing and also, or not advancing, but winning. So it's that double elimination bracket.
Not TCU.
TCU was beaten.
No, they're getting beat.
Oh, it's not final yet?
No, but it might as well be.
I saw that in the chat that it was. Okay, when we come back, Bruce Feldman from theathletic.com. Arizona's up 3-1 in the 7th. Bruce Feldman on a really cool story. He comes up with great ideas. That's why he is who he is. About the best play callers in college football, their biggest moments and their biggest play calls, and how did it come about? That's next. This is 365 Sports. IdealMRI.com. Dr. Rob Maxey and his staff in the Central Texas marketplace off I-35 in Waco. A business that I have visited many times, not just because they're a sponsor and have been even before we started doing the YouTube podcast with 365 Sports. I've been there to have an MRI on my back 2 or 3 different times, on my neck, and then even on my abdomen to see if there was something going on, which it was clear, which is good news because then the doctor, whoever it might be, orthopedic surgeon, urologist, whoever, can then make a different diagnosis. And I appreciate what they do. State-of-the-art imaging machine. Every time I have been inside, and I've been there before, they've waited for me to come off the show to get there to get an MRI. By the end of the day, easily, I get some sort of report back. Sometimes Dr. Maxey has called me and said this or that, but I'll get a report. When you leave, they give you a disc. If you want to take it by your doctor or surgeon, they are amazing and $497 or less every single time at IdealMRI.com.
In our logo and advertising, we say we are people that you can count on. What does that mean? It starts with providing a quality vehicle and quality service at a fair price. But it also means we do what we say we will do, and we treat people fairly with respect. It starts by hiring great people, good local folks who work hard with a caring attitude. Our employees are the real reason we are people that you can count on. Put us to the test and see for yourself that at Richard Carr Motors, we are people you can count on.
Parenting is full of surprises.
You never know what to expect.
So after our son was born, I called my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent to set up a life insurance policy in case something happened to me.
Sawyer is now 2.
And we'll soon have a sister. There's no one else I would trust with protecting my family.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow at GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive in North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive in North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
This is 365 Sports. Check out the 365 Sports family of channels on YouTube.
Bruce Feldman, senior writer, theathletic.com, with a story that came out. College coaches described the favorite play call of their careers. I'm pretty sure it's going to work. And he looked at a lot of, first thing I thought about were 3 or 4 games that are on this list based on those who he spoke with. He's on with Craig and Paul. David Smoak, 365 Sports. Bruce, I said this earlier and I said it to you. You come up with some, especially during the off times, some really unique and great ideas on articles that make a lot of sense once you dig into them, including, of course, the freaks and all that. When did this idea come in your mind? And how was like a couple of months, a couple of weeks, or what?
I have to thank you for the kind words first. I got to be honest. In this one, I have to tip my hat to one of my editors, Mitch Light, who had been thinking about this idea for a long time, and then he had talked to me about a little of it, and then we kind of put our heads together on who would be good to speak to, because then it felt like it was more of an offensive coach's bent as much as anything, and so this story. It's almost a year in the making. I remember I started talking to guys back last summer. There was a lot more I talked to that didn't, for one reason or another, didn't make the final cut because of story length. But it was a fun story to work on. My favorite one was actually a play that I got from Jim Donnan, a Hall of Fame coach who had been at Georgia and Marshall, had told me about when he was an OC back at Oklahoma in the Keith Jackson, the football player days, and the fact that we were able to find video of it, it was such a fun play. And like so many of these, some of the plays were offbeat, some of the plays were trick plays in big games, but it was a fun project to work on.
We had Hal Mummy, by the way, Bruce, on our show yesterday in discussion about the criteria for the National Football Foundation coaches and Hall of Fame inductees or nominees with the Mike Leach connection. And I was like, man, he's on this list. Of course, he was well known for being an amazing play caller, too.
He was. I mean, really innovative. He and Mike were the brains behind the air raid and that offense, which, spread in some form or fashion all over, especially the state of Texas and high school football and everything else. It was fun to talk to Hal because Hal had a play that was basically one of them where it came back to our receiver was the one who really pushed for it. He was confident, let's give it a try. And it obviously worked out great. It was one of the more simple plays in here, but it was obviously big circumstance that had then beaten Alabama, Kentucky, and forever. So it was fun to, that was the other thing that was really cool about this story was there's so many different reasons why somebody could feel like it was a favorite play. Maybe it was super creative. maybe it was in a spot that they had been setting it up for a long time, or other times it was like this, where it was just the player had so much conviction that they're like, yeah, why not? Let's just do that.
So there are a couple guys way back from the archives that you talked to. My favorite one being Norm Chow, who, because he was, an assistant coach for all that time, maybe doesn't get as much shine as he maybe deserves. He was a quarterback guru, and when you talked to him, was it kind of wild that he went to NC State in that time, or were you shocked where he came up with his favorite play?
Well, what was interesting was we talked about it, and a lot of these guys, it's almost easier to text people and say, hey, this is the story, because then it gives them a time to think about it. Whereas like Troy Calhoun, the Air Force coach, he kind of workshopped about 6 different plays over the course of a conversation. Dave Clawson, who didn't end up making the final version of the story at Wake Forest, also had a couple of those. With Norm, he remembered this play 2 different ways because they ran it, back when in the Phillip Rivers days when he was at NC State, but they also ran it when he was the offensive coordinator at USC with Leinart and Mike Williams, the receiver. And so it was just interesting that he, as he remembered it, he was thinking back. It was one of these guys, I know Leinert's left-handed and how they were going to do this, but there were just certain variations. And I think because in that case, it's over 25 years ago where, he remembers it, but then some of the details, he was like, I don't even remember the receiver, who was involved in it. I don't remember his name. And then when I told him, he was like, oh yeah, that's right. It's just because it's been so long for some of these guys.
Bruce, how often is it maybe the play that people aren't thinking of that is actually more special for the coach? I mean, Chris Peterson from that Oklahoma win, but not the play that everybody, as you point out in your article, that people would think of. And some of these are the plays that people would think of, but oftentimes it's a different vantage point for a coach, isn't it?
Yeah, and that was the example. Now I work with Coach Pete at Fox, and so we talk quite a bit. And I had talked to him. I was like, we ran this Statue of Liberty play in, with the team of 9-year-olds I was coaching at the time. And so we showed, a couple of the kids to play. And then he was like, on that play, look how close, his quarterback, Jared Zabransky's feet are to Ian Johnson, whereas that thing almost falls apart immediately because you don't realize how close they are to tripping over each other. And so I've had that play in my mind so much, but he was like, no, it's actually the play a couple plays before that, which happens to tie the game up late in the game before it goes into overtime. And it was a wild, it's the hook and ladder play. They pull it off, on 4th and 18 with 18 seconds left. And so I said to him, and he's a little older than me, but, so, the first time I ever saw that play, I was a little kid. We were on vacation in Florida, and I remember the Dolphins hit that. I remember the player who did it. It was Tony Nathan, who was a all-purpose running back from Alabama. Yeah, I feel like there's 2 of us who are going to remember this. It was so long ago, and they did it against the Chargers when it was Dan Fouts and Kellen Winslow. It was a great game, but I sent him it, and he goes, man. He goes, I was surprised he didn't remember that initially, but it was when they hit it, it was perfect. It was I had never seen it. I'm not sure, how many times people had seen that play in major football setting where it was run so perfectly in such a big situation. It was right before half. Tony Nathan just, catches the flip on the dead run up the sideline. And it wasn't like he was the fastest man on the field, but nobody was catching him. And it was just a perfect play. And so when Coach Pete did it, he was like, yeah, we didn't have a lot of other options at that point. So it was like, we got to do it.
Yeah, you mentioned Don, and I'm a lifelong Nebraska fan. And yes, the last 2 decades have been a little bit disturbing. But on that play to Keith Jackson, I'm old enough to remember that play. It's like a reverse to Keith Jackson, and it was kind of crowded, wasn't it, Bruce? Where he got the ball, it had to be flawless timing because they weren't able to get him the football. Nebraska had kind of been able to keep him out of the game a little bit. I remember that when I saw that article, I was like, oh my God, that was a brilliant call.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was from their own 12, so number 88 goes 88 yards, and he was he was a great player. And Donna had told me they put it in for Colorado the week before, and then they ended up saving it for Nebraska. When you watch that play, one of the things, Jim had told me was like, Keith had to be a great actor, because it's like, he's coming, like he's like basically fake blocking, and then he comes around, and I was like, of all the plays in this story, and we have video for most of them, this was my favorite play, because I was like, oh my God, this, like, you could see, especially, he was arguably the most talented athlete on the offense, and when it hits, it is, I'd be curious how many times people have tried some version of this, like Georgia had Brock Bowers. I mean, different, like, I'm not saying they never thought of it, but just like it works because it was an element of Oklahoma's offense. So they had this, what they called it was 15Y reverse right. And he said, we had 14 and 15 were basically fullback inside veer. One was to the left, one was to the right. And this was the wrinkle off it. And I think a lot of times that's what makes the play so special, when teams think it's going to be this because they're used to seeing it. And then the one time, it's got to hit. And this one absolutely did.
You mentioned Rich Rodriguez. Of course, he's now back at West Virginia. When he was with Tulane, your thoughts about him being back at West Virginia for a second tour?
I think it's great for West Virginia. I mean, he had it rolling when he left, to go to Michigan. Obviously didn't work out there, but I think he's a West Virginia guy. He's a really good coach. I think people forgot how much success he had at Arizona when nobody was, thinking much of them at that time. I think it's a really good move for the Big 12. I think it's a really good move for West Virginia. He did a really good job at Jacksonville State before he got there. I think he will get some players there. I mean, he knows that state better than anybody. I'm curious to see how it goes. Like Neil Brown's a good coach, and I think he did some good things there. And obviously Dana Holgerson was there, and I think he fit in well there. But to me, you look at the Rich Rod had a bunch of top 10 teams. They're big dangerous, because now you're in the Big 12 without Texas, without Oklahoma. That conference, as you guys know, is really up for grabs. So I'm not saying that they'll do what ASU did last year and come from seemingly nowhere and win it all, but it wouldn't shock me. I mean, he's a really good coach, and they have some good players. And again, I don't think the talent gap is significant anywhere in that league.
How long could this article have been had you left everything in there? I'm curious, because you talked to a lot of coaches.
Question. Yeah. That is a great question. I had a great conversation with Dana Holgerson for a terrific story. And as soon as I called my editor about this, I was like, it's almost like a separate story, because the reasons for why he liked a certain play were there was a lot to it, and there was just a lot of stuff in it. And there was it was probably like 6 other coaches who didn't end up making the final version for one reason or another. And, it just like, it's like most writers, you think there's no such thing as too long of a story. Yeah. You kind of realize when you read somebody else's, you're like, oh, that could have been a lot shorter. As much as you hate, it pains you to say it. And I'm definitely guilty of that.
Someone who's not thought of, Bruce Feldman, theathletic.com, and the story about the play callers and their favorite or memorable play was, he's not known for his offense, is Kirk Ferentz at Iowa. However, you brought up a bowl game against LSU back when Saban was there. And I kind of like, Kirk Ferentz is on a play calling type of a story. And a lot of times it gets a bad rap. They win a lot. But your thoughts about that one, about the Capital One Bowl against LSU?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of it was cool with Ferentz when he told me the story. There was some fun history behind it, because the player who caught it, Warren Holloway, he was like, that was his first touchdown catch. He was like, really good kid, couldn't get lined up for like 4 years, and then he finally figured it out. He was like, every Iowa fan is going to remember this play. And it was actually Saban's last game as the head coach at LSU. So it was like, there's some cool elements to it. Look, Brett Bielema gave me a good story. And Brett Bielema was another one who's like, no one's comparing him to, he's a defensive lineman. So, but that's the fun part of it, especially when guys are head coaches, because, they're the ones who'll be like, yeah, we're going to run this, or, take the suggestion and go with it. And I would say probably a third of the guys I ended up running with stuff here were guys that I don't think people think of them as creative offensive minds, but they are, they were the head coach, and it kind of worked. Look, I'm a guy you guys know well.
Yep.
Matt Rule is in this story, and I think he's a really good coach, and he did awesome job at Temple, and then obviously in Waco. But there's another one where it was just like, oh, this is, there's just a personal connection to the story.
Yeah, the one of them was the Oklahoma State game when Denzel Mims caught the pass with under a couple of 3 seconds left from Charlie Brewer, and it kind of goes over the history there. Bruce, if you don't mind, one more question or two about what you've seen this week with the spring meetings that normally don't get much attention. We know the SEC gets a lot of writers and massive media. Then Brett Yormark and the Big 12 had theirs. The Big 10 had theirs last week, and I don't think anyone even knew the tree fell in the forest. Some of this turf war that we're seeing as these various conferences try to position themselves in the college football playoff format.
The part that I'm not a huge fan of is that you build in, like what the SEC and the Big Ten want to do is build in like these extra automatic spots. Like the regular season has already been devalued some. We just look. I mean, I was in Columbus Thanksgiving weekend. Ohio State loses the second game to its arch rival. It's not a great season for Michigan. It wasn't like it was anywhere near a top 10 team. And because there's, I'm not saying they didn't belong in the playoff because it was a 12-team playoff, but they got in. They ended up winning. They were, to me, the best team. The one thing I had always loved about college football is it felt like when a really good team lost, if they got upset, it was like, man, that might have ruined their chances to win the national title. Maybe it felt like that way 30 years ago. I don't know if it felt that way in the last 10, but there was something to be said of how momentous a game was. Like Urban Meyer had some really bad upset losses with really talented teams. He had one to Iowa and another one to Purdue, and those games, to me, that's part of the fabric of college football. But now, you may have a 4-loss team in there. Obviously, you only had one 3-loss team in there last year, and that was the ACC champ Clemson. But if it was a 16-team playoff, you probably would have had 3 in the SEC from the SEC. Alabama, which had a terrible loss to a really mediocre Oklahoma team on the road, had a bad loss against a mediocre Vanderbilt team. Then you got Ole Miss, which had a good win against Georgia and a good win earlier in the season against the South Carolina team that was still finding itself. But then they lose to the worst team in the SEC, Kentucky. They lost to them in Oxford. And then all they had to do was, after they beat Georgia, was beat Florida, who was like an unranked team, and they lost to Florida. So they would go, look, I mean, I wasn't like railing against the expansion to go from 4 teams. And I don't want to be a hypocrite and, act, but like, this is what we're getting. You're going to get more teams. I just don't think they need to be automatically in. They'll probably go in anyway, but you really need to do it that way. So, but that's when you're at the top of the food chain and you're flexing your muscle, and you're also, in the case of some of these, ideas, I think that they're trying to make some more revenue streams in terms of getting more games for playing games. And that feels kind of, I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of that either.
Yeah. If in fact there was any kind of a super league that was, let's just say the SEC and the Big Ten, which would be what, 18, 30, how many teams? Would you ever consider, if they just broke away as those 2 conferences, which I don't think they can, no matter what they say, a national champion?
It wouldn't shock me down the road at some point if it got to that. I mean, I go back, like I was at the Rose Bowl last year, right? And like before that game, I remember getting a text from my brother in Florida, and he was like, "Are you watching this?" And it was basically the Arizona State-Texas game got pretty wild. And I was like, I saw a bunch of it, but I didn't see it when it got really crazy. And the point of it is, that was, as you guys know, that was the team picked to be in the bottom of the Big 12.
Yep.
They almost beat Texas, who was, to me, the best SEC team last year. You can say it was a fluke or whatever, but it didn't look like a fluke when they were playing each other. I mean, Texas needed needed a big, desperation play to win that game. So, having said all that, I think those are the things that make college football great, that it almost happened.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't want to see that go away. The Big 12 is to me the quirkiest league because it's the most up for grabs, right? There's no Clemson in it. Florida State obviously fell apart last year after almost making the playoff, but Miami has big payroll. Obviously Texas Tech now has, big payroll and, what's going on there. But I just feel like you look at TCU a couple of years ago was in the national title game. You saw what happened with ASU. I just think you don't want to lose that element of just the unpredictable nature that I think has college football. And I hope that the powers that be can remember that.
Bruce, do you think Brett Yormark going with 5 + 11 as opposed to 2 guaranteed spots is the right call?
Well, for him, I think it probably is the most sensible one. I just think, you're kind of, I don't want to say spitting in the wind, but when the other side of it is leaning into it that much, it's an uphill climb, but I think Yormark's been obviously great for the Big 12, and it just he's pushed a lot of the right buttons. He's pretty much since he's been there. And, in this case, I don't know how much leverage they have with it, though. That's the part that I'm interested to see.
I do think it was the better for, regardless of how much leverage he had or didn't have, I think rather than just taking the 2 gimmies and saying, hey, we'll go win it on the field is actually kind of encouraging and actually kind of refreshing, right? Than saying, let's just automatically dictate it before we've even played a game. That part of it I do enjoy, the 5 and 11.
No, I think part of his leadership is he's pretty fearless. And, good on him. I think that's it's not like he doesn't have resources. It's just, the Big Ten wants to do what the Big Ten wants to do and how they're posturing. And look, whatever, it's 16 of the last 20 national title teams have come from those 2 leagues, and the last 2 have actually come from the Big Ten. Greg Sankey gets irked when anybody talks about, are you doing it for the good of the game or the good of your conference? But at the end of the day, I'm not, once money's driving all the decisions, I think that other stuff gets pushed aside, and it's you just kind of all right, hopefully the game still resembles what the game looked like a few years ago.
Well, articles like the one you wrote today helps everyone keep that in perspective. Bruce, thank you, buddy. I know you're busy. Thanks for your time. Wonderful article.
Thank you, guys. Always a pleasure talking football with you.
Bruce Feldman, the Athletic college football writer. I wondered about this, and I put that up in the chat. It is a subscription site. And I've said this before. I have now 2 or 3 Extra Points with Matt Brown for a newsletter, and then theathletic.com. I don't know if there's another page site that I subscribe to. However, I wondered about this. I didn't ask him this but if the Tom Osborne coming up with things like the Fumble Rooskies back in the day when they used to run that play and successfully in huge moments, how does that work? Garrett, play caller, I brought up the loss to LSU, lost in that one article. Mm-hmm. Anybody in particular you'd be interested in knowing more about?
Not off the top of my head that I could think of.
Because Matt Rule and Kirk Ferentz are not your offensive geniuses by any means, but it was the moment at certain times.
No, maybe Les Miles had some quirky things he would pull out every once in a while at LSU, but
that's because he's quirky.
Yeah, he's very quirky. Mm. Yeah, but no, outside of that, there's nobody off the top of my head I can really think of.
The Rule call against Temple was not some kind of oh my God, what a play call. It was when he was
Temple.
What did I say?
Against Temple.
Okay, when he was at Temple trying to win a game, was a play call as the clock is running and everyone's saying spike the ball. He's telling his quarterback, who is really good, to make a play, make a throw. And half the offensive players were expecting a spike. Half of them, of course, ran the play, caught a touchdown with 1 second left of the game in the back of the end zone.
Well, that's why it works. because you have to
chaos
like that. I mean, if you think about Dan Marino's fake spike, the only people who knew it was going to be a fake spike were Dan Marino and the wide receiver who I think was Mark Clayton. I think
Larry Fitzgerald
in the fake spike. Oh, no.
Pittsburgh.
Oh,
just a joke.
Oh yeah, no, I was talking about in the Dolphins. The Dolphins.
Oh, Dolphins. Okay,
Dolphins,
well, I missed the joke then.
Yeah, because I do remember that Jets head coach Aaron Glenn was the guy that it happened to. But yeah, so like that's the key to that.
It's Tyreek Hill. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah. They both have illegitimate kids all over Miami.
That's true.
Whoa.
So. I'm not lying about Marino. He got a couple. But yeah, that's the key to those things. I would have loved to be able to hear about the punt rooski, which is Bobby Bowden's famous thing, but obviously, that's not going to happen because he's no longer with us. And I remember every week somebody would call up and ask Coach Bowden in the show, are you going to want to run the punt rooski this week? And he'd be like, I guess we'll see. Yeah. And like the answer is no, we can't. It was a kind of a fluke that it worked the first time.
Mark Ingram was the one, and I looked it up on if this is correct. Ingram's the one that caught the pass.
Yeah.
Aaron Glenn, now
a
head coach in the NFL, was the one, as you mentioned, former A&M star who bit on the play. All right, it is 5:28, almost 5:30, 365 Sports. We have a couple of other stories to get to. We'll break right here. We have the top 5 around the corner, and Andrew Valade with his poll results. All of that and more. Thanks for your time today. Please hit like and subscribe if you haven't. This is 365 Sports.
Richard Carr, Buick, GMC, Cadillac, they are the people that you can count on for all of your automotive needs. Whatever you're looking to get done, Richard Carr can help you get that done. Get into a new vehicle, pre-owned vehicle, get your car fixed up right now. They're celebrating our nation with the Red, White, and Blue Savings Event. And so that means that every new or used car and truck is priced with special American-sized savings right now over at the lot. For example, you can save $87.50 on all 2025 GMC Sierra 1500 SLE and SLT models in stock for qualified buyers. If you're looking for some different kind of options, like in the EV department, if you're driving an EV already, but it's a little bit boring, you're trying to flip the switch, get something a little bit more exciting, but stay in electric, you can test drive the new Cadillac Lyriq all-wheel drive, offers 500 horsepower, will go 0 to 60 in 4.6 seconds, and has a single charge distance of over 300 miles. So those are a couple of different makes and models that are on the lot right now. If you're looking for a pre-owned vehicle, they've got you squared away there as well with hundreds of used cars, priced to move for your upcoming summer travel. They're locally owned, they're locally run, and they're celebrating 26 years of business in Waco and Central Texas. So do business with a dealership that gives back to the local community. Check them out over at richardcarr.com. Go see them in person or give them a phone call. Richard Carr, Buick, GMC, Cadillac.
Edward Jones Financial Advisors Ben Erlinson, Brad Wilson, and Cam Heathcott understand these are difficult and changing times we live in, but they know how important your financial investments are to you. So is your financial advisor staying in touch with you and helping you navigate today's financial climate? Invest with Edward Jones Financial Advisors Ben Erlinson, Brad Wilson, and Cam Heathcott, who invest their time and experience back to you and your money. And like coaching athletes, investing money is about time, patience, and encouragement. Contact Ben Erlinson at 254-759-8533. Brad Wilson's location at 250 Sharon Drive in Woodway, and Cam Heathcott in Conroe. Edward Jones Financial Advisors, Ben Erlinson, Brad Wilson, and Cam Heathcott, proud sponsors of 365 Sports. Edward Jones, making sense of investing, member SIPC.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Do you or your kids get nervous about going to the dentist? Stonewood Dental, Dr. Steve Childress, he can help.
I've spent a career taking care of patients who as children had bad experiences, and now they're adults that hate going to the dentist. If I get a kid at 3 years old and they come every 6 months, and it's a happy experience. It's normal for them. Now they have an accident at 6 or 7 or 8 at school. Now they have a broken tooth or a trauma, and they have to come here. They're used to lights, they're used to water in their mouth, they're used to experience, they already trust us. It's amazing what we can do with that kid without it being a negative thing. But if I see a 6 or 7 or 8-year-old that's never been to the dentist, and now they have a trauma or an unfortunate unexpected toothache, it's harder to do that for that kid and it not be somewhat of a negative experience. So bottom line is I try to teach kids and adults and teenagers, everybody, the way I'd want my family treated, which is where it's a necessary part of life. You just take care of it. It doesn't have to be that big a deal.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
1, 2.
I'm in love with a man named Rudy. I'm okay with that. He knows exactly what I want. He keeps me coming back. He cooks breakfast, lunch, and dinner for me. Does the dishes too. I'm in love with a man named Rudy. Last name Barbecue. It sure is easy to fall in love with Rudy's tasty oak smoked barbecue.
Next in line.
This is 365 Sports.
The 5 o'clock hour is sponsored by Edward Jones Investments with financial advisor Ben Erlinson, who'll navigate you through today's financial climate. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
365 Sports, an update. College baseball regional round, the opening day. Florida State resumes with Bethune-Cookman up 5-2. Georgia 17-2 in the 8th over Binghamton. UCLA 7-2 over Fresno State in the 7th. Alabama down in the bottom of the 9th to Miami 5-3. Other games, including the Big 12. Arizona 3-2 in the 9th against Cal Poly. We mentioned the games that have gone final, including West Virginia winning against Kentucky 4-3. TCU blown out by USC. My God, 13-1. Texas 7-1 over Houston Christian. We mentioned them earlier as they host in Austin. And then also the game Cincinnati beating Wake Forest 11-6. That game being played in Knoxville. Games tonight. Craig mentions the ones playing tonight. K-State UTSA is a game tonight, and Oklahoma State Duke is a game also being played tonight.
Yeah, look at you, Stetson, 8-0 over NC State, doing really well.
Damn.
That one's very surprising. Vanderbilt's down early, 2-0, but we'll see how long that holds. They're really, really, really good. So, this is an interesting couple of days here. And the first thing, you have weather delays, you have all this stuff. How do you set up your pitching? If you're the top seed, do you pitch your Saturday guy on Friday and your Friday guy on Saturday so that if you win, you're better? Or if you lose that way, whatever happens, you have your number one guy going to either keep you in it or take that next step. Yeah, I really enjoy this is the part of baseball coaching. Like, baseball is one of those sports that I think is like really hard to coach in spurts, but really easy over like the long haul, because
if you have pitching, it's a lot easier.
Yeah, but you also, like, the strategy of baseball, can come and go based on what's happening. And so you can go maybe like a coach can go 4 games. And if you're hitting right, like, he doesn't have to do anything and pitching well. You don't really have to come up with ideas. He just can go, he's tired, let's take him out.
Creighton,
that's it.
Creighton in Kansas, Arizona State, UC Irvine also on tap tonight. All right.
Were you trying to leave them out, or
No. I was kind of in between.
I was wondering if Chad was like,
no,
hey.
No, I know better. The chat, by the way, that little game that is now a part of the leaderboard has created a frenetic energy on who is number one. Right now, it's the old Barn Cat Go K-State. The rules are post a lot, and if you want to, give us money, and I'll make sure we rig the damn thing for you. Kim Coulter should be number one today, with all due respect for the 7 or 8 super chats from earlier in the show. Now, earlier, again, Brett Yormark and Dr. Livingstone of Baylor met with the media in Orlando as the Big 12 wrapped up spring meetings. One of the stories, or one of the topics that we discussed earlier, was exposure. It was about, if you have networks like Fox and ESPN, are they giving you what you need, along with the fact, of course, they're paying it a ton of money to broadcast your games? But it's bigger than that. It's a lot bigger than that. Garrett did a great job today monitoring that presser over Zoom. And here's Brett Yormark.
We have great media partners, obviously with ESPN and Fox, and then they've sub-licensed some of our content to TNT, CBS, and NBC. So really in our family now, we have 5 of the biggest distribution partners that exist in collegiate sports, which gives us an advantage to elevate and amplify our brand, to do more storytelling. When you think about the windows and being on broadcast television, because right now that's the widest reaching platform to be on. In our first 3 weeks, 11 of the games from Fox, 9 are on Big Fox. We're also featured on ESPN1 quite a bit in those first 3 weeks. So I'm very confident that our TV partners will continue to put us in the right TV windows so we can elevate and amplify what we do and tell the great stories around our student athletes and our conference. That being said, you've seen that we're moving a couple of games more so than we have in the past to Friday nights because there's clear air there. Got a couple of games on Thursday nights, and we will continue to work with the board and the ADs on whether there are other windows that we can exploit with our TV partners. They're not just disruptive to our campuses, but enhance, the viewership opportunities for our school.
All right, so there's Brett Yormark on that.
So, I mean, there's people out there that don't like Friday night games, and then they don't like ESPN Plus, and then they don't like this. And it's like, well, you got to have like options that are actually feasible. You can't just command that you be on Saturday and you be on main ESPN and you be in prime time and you be this and that. If you want exposure, which is something they sorely need, it's not going to be just getting handed big noon kickoff. Like, you have to go out and earn those types of things with winning on the field, but also being interesting brands that bring in eyeballs. Because I promise you, if Iowa State brought in 7.5 million viewers like Ohio State does, guess what Iowa State would be on a lot more often? Prime time, big noon kickoff, college game day, etc. And they are an example of like basically the entire league is all kind of in the same boat there. So I know the Friday night thing's not popular. I actually don't mind it too much, and I'll mind it even less now that I won't be at high school football games. But for those that are going to still be doing that, yeah, it sucks. It's not ideal, but you can't complain about lack of exposure and then also complain when they try to make moves to go get exposure. It's kind of how I see it, at least. So I would prefer to not have Friday night games if it was my choice. But I also know that if the alternative is, okay, play on Saturday, but instead of being on ESPN Main, you're going to be on ESPN Plus. I'm going to play on Friday night on ESPN Main and then, worry about maybe a little bit more of a headache when it comes to the fans and how they feel about having to travel on a Friday night or missing out on high school football. So it's just a byproduct of the way everything's set up right now. And there's only so much real estate, and you're trying to grab what you can that's valuable if you're the Big 12. And part of that is having to play on different nights. But, hopefully you story tell and win enough to where you can have a little bit more command over those types of things in the future. Or, one of these deals with one of these other networks turns into something even larger down the line here in the next 5 years as well. They certainly have plenty of options when it comes to partners to at least discuss those things with. So that's good. And that's something that he's been very much a part of building up. Even though I do feel like the TNT thing was misreported by the typical suspects because it wasn't juicy enough. That is more of a sublease type of a thing, but it could pay off down the road for sure.
In the future, I'm curious to see where they go. The Warner Brothers Discovery.
I mean, they're such a mess, dude.
Yeah,
who knows in 5 years?
Yeah, like they're they've right now. I think they're more worried about their movies that are coming out, like their big tent poles and stuff like that. So, inside the NBA is going to be it's going to be produced by them in the same studio and everything, but then just sold to ESPN. But they've got maximum 2 episodes of that left. As soon as the Eastern Conference Finals are over, TNT won't air inside the NBA anymore. So what is their sports future like? What does that mean for them? That they don't have any NBA games. They'll have the NHL. They've got baseball certain times of the year on TBS and other places.
Pro wrestling.
They've got pro wrestling, and they've got
and they've got hockey still. And do they have hockey during the season or just the postseason?
They have it during the season.
Yeah, during the season.
It's
Yes,
later
sir.
on during the season, not early on. But once it gets in the mid.
Because that's Bissonnette and those guys, right?
Yeah. So they have hockey, like they have a sports profile, but it's not probably what they would want it to be. But again, they're a mess right now. There's a lot going on.
Yeah, TNT is a good station. It's just that the leadership of the overall big corporate umbrellas they don't seem like they know what they're doing whatsoever. So I think the having the subleasing games, or however you would properly phrase it, to Turner is a good move, and maybe that's something that pays off the next go around. And because they are in a different space and maybe needing more, then maybe all of a sudden you get some primetime Saturday night regularity, and you don't have to play as many Friday night games. But for now, that's what you have to do. So that's just part of the deal.
All right. Garrett Ross, thank you very much. We're not done. We have Paul's top 5 around the corner and Andrew Valade with the poll results from earlier. Emery, as I mentioned earlier, working on 365 Sports tonight. The chat room, because I'm the one that's committed to watching it and sometimes babysitting it, has lost its mind, guys, on this new leaderboard thing that's popped up. Is this an Andrew Valade, King Jiu-Jitsu, Emery Winter, Garrett Ross director, producer, and whatever else agreement?
I think it was just an update.
I think YouTube just added a feature.
It sounded like somebody winning an Academy Award. I like to think it is nuts what people are doing, and it's fight down the stretch they come on who is number one by the end of the day. It's kind of fun. The Office fan right now is taking the lead. All right, Paul Catalina at his top 5 and the poll results. That's next.
Overwhelmed by your inbox? Clean Email is here to help. Organize, clean, and manage your emails with powerful automation tools. Say goodbye to spam and clutter and enjoy a stress-free inbox. Try Clean Email today at cleanemail.com. That's CLEAN email.com. Founded in 1910, Samsonite is the world leader in durable, high-quality luggage and travel accessories. Made to the highest standards, our products won't let you down. We give you the confidence to get out there and explore. Inspired by the past, devoted to the present, and built to inspire a multi-generational future, Samsonite is here to elevate your journey. Travel with Samsonite and pack confidence every step of the way. Shop now at shop.samsonite.com. Samsonite.
This is Paul Catalina's Top 5.
Welcome into Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Flag and Anthem. This lovely ensemble, Flag and Anthem. And you can use our promo code 365sports for a discount at checkout. Go to Flag and Anthem or just go to 365sportsdeals.com, find their logo, click on it, and all of our other logos and sponsors are there. I know you're looking at me going, how can I be so handsome and stylish? Well, Flag and Anthem. Easy. So there you go. I mean, the handsome I can't do anything about. It's just Jesus, baby. Anyway, things I learned after a really confusing week of off-season college football talk. Number 5. The SEC has no consensus You've got some people that want the automatic qualifiers. The coaches want 5+11. Greg Sankey just wants ultimate power. There are some presidents that believe the SEC and the Big Ten are the only people who should be allowed to compete for a national championship. It's a confusing ball of twine right there out of Destin this week. Very, very strange week. And look, Greg Sankey's out there saying a lot of things, taking a lot of bullets, and understandably, some of those are earned and some of those are not. But the one thing I did learn about those SEC meetings is they're not on the same page yet. Some want to only play 8. Some want to play 9. Some want to play 9 plus the SEC Big Ten cross-conference challenge. Some only want to do that if the Big Ten allows them to do what they want to do. The Big Ten is watching the SEC, seeing what they want to agree to on a playoff. It's confusing. It's a lot. And the SEC is at the center of all of it. Number 4, I don't know what Tony Petitti sounds like. I have no idea. Do you? Does anybody? Like, could you do a Tony Petitti impression? For all I know, he sounds like that. I don't know. Maybe he doesn't speak at all. Maybe he's like Black Bolt from Marvel Comics, and his voice alone can shatter the cosmos. I'm not sure. Who knows? He doesn't say much. Maybe he has a guy who stands next to him and writes out what Tony Petitti is thinking. Maybe he's a mime. I have no idea. And he's letting Greg Sankey get rocks just thrown at him and at him and at him. And the automatic qualifier thing was his idea. Don't know what he sounds like. Would be nice to hear it. No idea at all. Number 3, the Big Ten and SEC are in a frenemy state. They are aligned in that they want world domination and aren't as worried about everybody else as they are about themselves. However, now you get into the point of, well, the SEC only plays 8 games. We play 9. How do we make them play 9? Should we do this? Should we approve this model? If we approve this model, that model, what's going to be equitable? What's worth it to the SEC? What's worth it to the Big Ten? So now we've reached the frenemy stage, which means they are friendly enemies. Frenemies. Weird. It's very weird what's going on there, and it is going to determine what our next CFP format is. Number 2, the Big 12 has made its position clear. They're 5+11. They think that you should play it out on the field. The ACC has said almost as much, not quite yet. We'll hear from them later. We've heard from them as well, but maybe not as definitively as Brett Yormark said it, not only today, but yesterday and before, that 5+11 is the most competitive model, and it's earned on the field. So we know where they stand. We know where the ACC stands. And the Big Ten and the SEC are kind of out in the wilderness. And we do know where all the other non-Power 4 conferences stand. They all want the 5+11 model as well. But again, the determination is really only going to be made by the SEC and the Big Ten. And number 1, the SEC thinks the committee messed up. They question the very existence of the committee and want to find ways to take the committee out of it. Now, this I do mildly support, but I support it on the basis of fact, because they put out some propaganda this week, which was ridiculous, which our schedule is really hard, you guys. We can't do a 9th game without some concessions. I mean, it's hard. The S&P is really high. Why? That's what it sounded like to me. But they are wrong in believing that their strength of schedule wasn't considered when Alabama, Ole Miss, or South Carolina didn't get into the playoff last year. They had a bid stealer in Clemson come in. It happens in basketball all the time. It happened in the first year of the 12-team playoff and will happen a lot of the time. A bid stealer is going to come in, win a conference, and then somebody's getting screwed. That's just the nature of sports. That's how it is. The SEC is trying to stack the deck in either format by saying their strength of schedule should be weighted. Now, they are giving you data from 10 years ago. 10 years ago, college football was wildly different than it is now. We really need to be looking at data from the last 3 to 4 years where NIL and the transfer portal in the Wild West era have gone, because that has leveled the playing field in a way not not seen before in college athletics, especially not in the SEC's era of dominance. So they are being intellectually dishonest on one front in that they want you to look back to an era where college football was wildly different just a decade ago. And two, they are being intellectually dishonest in saying the strength of schedule is what kept them out. It is not, or it was not considered heavily enough. As a matter of fact, I think the exact opposite thing happened. Alabama and Ole Miss in particular were only considered 3 loss possibilities for the college football playoff because of their strength of schedule. But you have losses to teams that have 6 and 5 losses, multiple. Alabama lost to Oklahoma and to Vanderbilt. Tennessee lost to Florida, who was a bowl team, but still had 5 losses, and Kentucky, not a bowl team. That's why they were out, and that's why Clemson was able to come in and steal their bid in the first place. Either one of those teams doesn't lose one of those games, they're in. And maybe SMU might have been out when Clemson stole that bid. But since SMU had a better record and some more quality wins, they went in. It had nothing to do with your strength of schedule not being looked at. The only reason that a team like Alabama at 9-3 gets in is because of their strength of schedule. So stop with the propaganda. That's going to do it for us. Andrew made some polls. Smokey, give the results. It's the last thing that people will hear before their weekend, so better do it enthusiastically.
I will do so in a great weekend in college athletics with what's going on with baseball, softball, and more. Andrew Valade and the polls from earlier today, huge number today. Do you agree with the Big 12's decision to pause on private equity and naming rights for the conference with those discussions? Yes, it's wise to be cautious. 58%, double 2.5 times the other two at 21%. No, pursue new revenue streams and not sure need more information.
I mean, I'm somebody who's in the green there, that it's wise to be cautious. I say what I said earlier. It's just a situation now where I think there's just too much going on to just feel like you can go full bore into private equity and really have any clue of what you're doing on the other side of it right now. Yeah. So I think you got to just press pause, like what they're doing. They didn't say they won't do it. They just said they're pressing pause on it and, continue to gather info and continue to see where the chips fall ultimately. But I do think with the middle part of, I do think they are pursuing new revenue streams still. I don't think that's going to stop. So rest assured that's not going to not be part of the equation. It's just not specifically private equity right now.
By the way, somebody in the chat room the last 2 or 3 days has brought up the fact that there was some sort of a hostile takeover with the ACC and Big 12 and Cody Campbell and all that. I've checked into that, and that I don't know where that came from, but I wanted to address that before the end of the week. Cody Campbell, of course, I think put a little bit of that, holy crap, this guy, when you look at the SEC and maybe some of the reactions in the Big Ten. And then even though that presidential commission is basically now null and void, but somebody had put up a note.
On the chat room?
Yeah.
I don't know if those are considered valuable sources.
What does it mean, hostile takeover is what I'm asking.
That 8 athletic directors in each conference, along with Cody Campbell, we're going to had begun what was being reported by AIR, a hostile takeover to try to take control of the Big 12 and the ACC. There's no substance to it, but I wanted to address it because it was asked multiple days in a row by 1 or 2 different members. I checked on all that, and that's why I brought it up with this particular poll from earlier today.
Sometimes people ask dumb questions.
Or make dumb comments.
Yeah.
Right. Or throw stuff against the wall, see if it sticks. The other poll, can the Knicks complete the comeback and win the series? I watched last night. The Knicks were dominant. Is it Karl Anthony Towns? Had a huge night. So did Jalen Brunson. By the way, think about this. Mavericks fans have already had a bad enough year. Jalen Brunson, Rick Carlisle are both in a Eastern Conference Finals series. Both, of course, Carlisle won an NBA title with the Mavericks before.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
And he was ready to go. He was ready to go.
Yeah, they fired him. They fired Rick Carlisle, so I can't really be upset about that. They fired him, so they decided to go their separate ways. So it's not like trading away a guy that nobody wanted to trade away and then going, well, look, he's in the playoffs now. Like, that hurts. Rick Carlisle, years after the fact, And having already won a title, it doesn't bother me at all.
Yeah.
And Brunson basically and his father, right? They kind of muscled themselves out of Dallas.
Well, the Mavs didn't play that probably. I don't know. There's a lot of opinions on how that all went down. They could have kept Brunson, but like it's revisionist history to act like he was the player that he became when they were making that decision. Like he wasn't quite that dude just yet. So I can understand where they were coming from, but there are very much revisionists out there that act like this was all just, they had to have known he was going to be what he became. No, they didn't know that.
He was starting to show that, but not at this level.
Yeah, Mark, I've heard Mark Cuban talk about it. In fact, I heard him talking about it on the Daily Show one time with Jon Stewart, who's a huge Knicks fan. And he said, look, I can go into it forever. He's like, it's one of my regrets of like not pulling the trigger, but he's like the data just wasn't, he's like, it wasn't there for us to go to the level that the Knicks were willing to go to. And he's like that, he's like, yeah, he's like, you can't make all perfect decisions. And then he's like, and he kind of even made a joke because it was recently about Luka and how upset he was about it. Karl Anthony Towns is such a confounding player because he's very good at offense and he's awful on defense. I mean, he is one of the worst big guy defenders I've ever seen. And it's not because he's not willing. It's not like we were talking about James Harden earlier. I don't know if James Harden's good on defense or bad. I just know that he won't do it.
He just never
tried to do it. Yeah. So it's kind of like telling me like, oh, I don't like to dance. Have you ever danced? Like, no, I've never tried it. Well, we don't know if you're good or not until you try. Karl Anthony Towns tries, but then he makes these really stupid fouls. So in the close games, they've got to go to the backup, Mitchell Robinson, who can't make – he's worse than Shaq at free throws. And so the Pacers just foul him until they put in the third string guy. So that's why I don't think that even if the Knicks come back, or the Pacers, I think the Pacers and Thunder would be a better series. Well, if it's the Knicks and the Thunder, I don't think the Knicks have the horses.
57%. No, Pacers close it out in game 6. And then 19% momentum is on their side. I don't know, but they won a game. They're down 3-1 now, 3-2.
Well, they got to go back to. They got to go back to Indiana now.
Yep.
So they had the home crowd on their side. Mariska Hargitay right there in the front row. Law and Order SVU.
Oh, really?
There's always there's just the same people like Ben Stiller, Timothée Chalamet, Spike Lee, Tracy Morgan, always there.
And it's like everyone thinks that they are walking on water.
But it is, But it is funny to me to see like the random ones that pop up. That are there, that are Knicks fans or not,
One quick note to close out the show. Baylor men's basketball added Ron Sanchez as an assistant coach on their staff. He was a part of Tony Bennett's staff for a long time at Virginia. And he's been added as they have added him to a coaching hire with Scott Drew.
Was the interim last year?
Huh?
The interim last year.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. When Bennett, remember, he left at the very last second. All right, Garrett Ross, thank you. Andrew Valade, thank you. And Emery Winter, thank you. Tonight, 365 Sports tonight at 10:30. Craig and Paul, I'm David Smoak. Have a great weekend and good night.